Welcome everyone to our town board meeting. For those of you who have never attended a town board meeting before, we will first have public hearings followed by an administrative calendar. There are meeting agendas available in the rear of the pavilion. If you would like to be heard on any matter, please go fill out a form at the back of the pavilion and hand it to the public safety officer who will hand it in. After the meeting is adjourned, we will honor our tradition of 350 years and remain in session to hear any residents that would like to be heard on other matters. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gillen?
Here.
Councilman Blakeman?
Here.
Councilman D'Esposito?
I'm here.
Councilman Dunn?
Here.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Here. Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Here. I now ask the Senior Councilwoman Dorothy Gooseby to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask everyone to just remain standing, please, for a moment of silence to honor Thomas D. Francesi, who was an honorary chief of the Belmore Merrick EMS. He was a first responder at 9/11 and died of complications and illness related to 9/11 injuries.
Madam Supervisor, can I ask we stay standing, please? Remember the 3 Marines from the Marine Corps barracks on Stewart Avenue that were killed in Afghanistan last week. One from Locust Valley, right here in our own county of Nassau. And a total of 11 that were killed in Afghanistan last week, plus the 2 Marines that died in a crash in Utah just this weekend. Please remember them in a quick prayer. 75 Marines. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, will you please call our first public hearing?
Proposed local law regarding regulations and restrictions to limit parking in Baldwin, Hewlett, Oceanside, and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, I move the hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman D'Esposito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, will you call our next public hearing, please?
Proposed local law regarding parking or standing prohibitions in or near Belrose Terrace, Hewlett, Inwood, Levittown, Oceanside, and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I will close the hearing and vote on the item. Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman D'Esposito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding arterial stops in East Meadow and Franklin Square and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard?
Motion to close the hearing and vote on the item.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman D'Esposito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding U-turns prohibited in Wantagh.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, I move the hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman D'Esposito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, will you call our next public hearing, please?
Proposed local law to be entitled Code of Ethics.
Felix Bocacci?
Felix Lucacci, 1165 Barn Street, Franklin Square, New York. On page 16 of this law, it says it will be periodically reviewed by the Ethics Board to ensure it promotes public confidence, promote integrity. I can tell you right now, the way it's written, it's going to promote nothing. It's just going to be a waste of paper, a waste of the law. There's a lot of good things in it, but there's a lot of things that are so vague that you could run a truck through it and you wouldn't even know. What is reasonable promptness? I don't expect any answers from this because you just go on and waste my time, but how about passing a law for political gain? Will that be a violation? What is an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy? I've been searching for that answer for months. Joe Ross said something about HIPAA. When I inquired about it, couldn't find anything. Now COVID's working on an excuse and a FOIL request. Unwarranted invasion of privacy is in this ethics law, but it's not defined. So it's defined as the Ethics Board wants it to be defined, and therefore nothing will get done, because when you have language that's so vague, you can't enforce anything. The town attorney is going to be part of the Ethics Board. He's the executive leader for the Franklin Square Republican Club. I mean, conflict of interest, major conflict of interest. Once again, nothing will get done. You know, when you did public inspection, when you did inspections or investigations of the animal shelter, and I asked for those reports, here they say you could examine reports. I couldn't even be given the dates that those reports were made, because they said everything invaded personal privacy. So I don't even know if anything got done. I said, give me a number, one, and start date and end date. I couldn't get that because it was an invasion of personal privacy. I mean, this law is a joke. I mean, it's really a joke because, not that there's not great stuff in it, but you're going to give me some excuse, because I could write I could go through the trouble of writing ethical complaints right now. There's a ton of stuff I could do right now, and you're going to say it's an unwarranted invasion of privacy, it's no good, you know, you're saying what you're saying is wrong, but they won't give any reason why it's wrong. So you're basically just, you know, wasting the public's time with this thing. And also, it was never brought to the public. It was done behind closed doors. I advocated for a public discussion of this law way back when it was introduced in September. That was never done. So, you know, it's nice that you're trying, but I think it's just a ploy, a political ploy. It's not going to do anything. Thank you.
Mr. Procacci, would you like Mr. Leventhal to address your concern about unwarranted invasion of personal privacy? Mr. Leventhal, do you want to respond to that comment?
Yes. Thank you. The term unwarranted invasion of personal privacy comes from the Public Officers Law. The Public Officers Law is the statute that that establishes a code of conduct for state officers and employees. And in particular, the Freedom of Information Act includes certain categories of information that may be discussed in executive session. Among those, according to that statute, are matters that would result in an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy if disclosed. So it is true that that a term like that requires a degree of interpretation, but that is also the case with most laws. There's judgment that is exercised in implementing them and enforcing them, and that is why we have an ethics board. We have judges to interpret laws and apply them in particular cases, and we have a board of ethics that will also interpret this law if it's enacted and apply it in particular cases.
Okay, just let me answer real quick because I have 17 seconds left. First of all, you asked for my name and address, but then you redact the address of the people on the financial disclosure. But you're asking for people's public address at this hearing and make it available to the public, and yet that's an invasion of personal privacy on a financial disclosure form. And in addition, in the Camp Anchor situation, the town officials released the addresses of these children, and now they're arguing in court that it wasn't an invasion of personal privacy. So you have the double standard here, where you were fighting a case saying that it wasn't an invasion of privacy, releasing those addresses, and you're taking the other side by redacting the addresses on a financial disclosure form.
So which one is it? And you're gonna have to make up your mind, but it can't be both.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Procacci. Valerie Lamb.
Good morning, Town of Hempstead Board and elected officials.
Good morning.
I'm in the best mood. Thank you, Senior Councilman Guzzi. I'm here today, for this segment, strictly to express my gratitude and my excitement over this Councilman Diaz-Esposito. I know for a long time, it's been actually since July, where I believe it was brought to the public's attention that there was a constituent. She came here herself. Her name is Bonnie Radashar. And this constituent was also not just a hardworking taxpayer of the town of Hempstead, but she is a former Supervisor Gillen supporter on her campaign trail. One of the few who, in addition to working 9 to 5 in the city, commuting through the LIRR, taking care of a feral cat community as well as her family, she campaigned and rallied and made every effort possible to help Supervisor Gillen get elected. So I don't know exactly what her turning point was. Many of Supervisor Gillen's former supporters had their turning points and they varied, but she did come here to express when she could and took off of work to communicate to you, Supervisor Gillen, that she was disappointed in your lack of progress and commitment to the animal shelter, and which is something that many of us supported you on strictly on that issue. So the next thing you know, she received a memorandum at her job threatening her livelihood, naming you, Supervisor Gillen, as the reason for why she was going to be asked not to participate in her local government anymore, to not come here and voice or even be able to express her concerns and grievances. And this is the very fundamental basic of our Constitution. It's sad to me that this ethics clause even has to be proposed. I mean, do we have to have a separate ethics clause to be enforced within America's largest and greatest township? Do we have to go one by one? It's just unacceptable that it even has to come to this. So it's not the first time we've seen you attempt to silence other people. Anyone who criticizes you or who disagrees with you. You did it to the receiver of taxes when you wouldn't allow his information to be posted on the town website. That's not your call. You did it to Councilman Diaz-Esposito when he released the press release, who he was bringing attention and hopefully trying to end the parole for a disgusting human being who threw a police officer off a roof, and you kiboshed it, and your administration did not allow that to go onto the Town of Hempstead website. That is shameful. That is un-American. And you did it to me when you told me I shouldn't sit next to Diane Madden and Lucille Tafina because they oppose you.
Thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Mr. Leventhal, I just have a couple of questions with respect to the Ethics Code 38-3. I'm sorry, actually 38-2, the definition of relative. Looking at the definition of relative, it appears that this does not include a person's in-laws. So it appears to me that under this definition of relative, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-laws, all the people that I'll be sitting with at the Easter dinner table and other people will be sitting with at their holiday dinner tables, they're not related to me under this definition. Is that right?
They are not included in the definition of relative, that is right.
So I could hire my father-in-law and supervise my father-in-law because he's not related to me under this definition. Is that correct?
Actually, the state law that governs ethics for local municipalities, Article 18 of the New York General Municipal Law, does not contain the definition of relative, and in fact expressly permits the spouse of an officer or employee of a municipality to be hired by that municipality. The problem is not if a spouse or relative works for the same municipality. The problem is if one relative is in a position to set the terms of employment of another, to supervise them, and to exercise authority with respect to their relative. And that is regulated by this code of ethics.
But I'm asking about our code. So under our code, your in-laws are not your relatives.
Under our code, the definition of relative does not include in-laws.
But does everybody on this board agree that your in-laws are not your relatives, that your mother-in-law and your father-in-law, your sister-in-law, they shouldn't be viewed as your relatives?
It's already covered in state law?
The state law does not define relative, but it permits the hiring of a spouse of an officer.
This is garbage.
Mr. Leventhal, I just have a question. When was the final draft of the ethics legislation shared with the supervisor and the board?
Months ago, there was a bipartisan news conference held at which it was announced to the public and introduced.
But since sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we've been discussing it since then, but this is a change that I have pushed for that I think is really important. The state law may not define relative, but we are electing here in our town code to define relative. And to me, it's incomprehensible that my father-in-law and my sister-in-laws and my brother-in-laws are not my relatives. So, I mean, nobody here has an answer for that? You all think your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, your sister-in-laws are not your relatives?
Well, I don't think this is a question of the definition of a relative. I mean, my third cousin twice removed is a relative of mine, but it's whether or not we need to legislate that role. If anything, in-laws, at least my family, are often outlaws, and we treat them more harshly. So I think we need to look at practice and reality and whether, I mean, right? So, I'm lucky I have the Atlantic Ocean between my in-laws. But I just think we're looking at what's practical, not whether or not, there's no way that the town of Hempstead is trying to state that in-laws are not relatives. It's whether or not we need to legislate that relationship.
Well, your third cousin, I would agree with you, that's getting pretty far afield. I think only when people take the bar exam do they really understand if someone's like their second cousin or their first cousin once removed. It's kind of vague. But in terms of father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, I think that's pretty close. I mean, I think most people were going to be celebrating, a lot of people are celebrating holidays this weekend, Passover, Easter, and I think generally on holidays like this, we celebrate with our in-laws. I mean, maybe some families don't get along, but the families that do, those are the people that you celebrate with. So in terms of practical application of the ethics law on people who are in close familial relationship, I find it incomprehensible that we're saying that our immediate in-laws are, and you don't have to make it any in-law, you can say father-in-law, same people that we define here, father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law. That's certainly something that could be spelled out in this code, since we are choosing to define relative.
Well, there is no uniform definition of relative among municipalities.
Oh my God.
So while we can have a reasonable discussion about where to draw the line in defining relative, I respectfully would say that it's an overstatement to say that it's incomprehensible not to include in-laws. There is no uniform definition. It's a question of what definition best achieves the goals of the ethics program and what the policymakers deem necessary to achieve those goals. The line is drawn in various places in various municipalities.
Every answer is vague.
And I think that at the last minute, be given another exception. Well, I would like to move that we pass this as is, and if there's any other thing that we can always amend.
Yeah, we could do that.
Amend this. And I have no in-laws working for the town or the county,
Just your son.
or the state, or the federal government. I have nobody of interest in
Please
my.
stop yelling from the
But
gallery.
at the last minute, we always end up with another thing to kick the can down the road, and I don't want to kick it down the road. Let's pass this as we have it now. It's been agreed after July all the way to now. We finally got the law before us. Let's pass it. We want to amend it, include in-laws and dogs and whatever you want to include in it, fine. Let's look at everything and do it all at one fell swoop. Because piece by piece, people are going to miss out on something. So at the last minute to bring it up, and I have no interest in this at all. It's no part of my family, none of my in-laws are working for any municipality. So I think we should pass this as is, because a lot of time and effort went into this since July, just before July. And we finally got it before us. Now you find another little thing that why don't we do, you know what, let's just pass it on thing, amend it later when we have everything together, and that's my recommendation. I make a motion that we move the item as is.
I'm not suggesting at all, Councilman, that we should kick this down the road. Certainly, this is something that I advocated for along with with Councilman Keith Sweeney. The last thing I'm suggesting is that, but we have been talking about making amendments, and this is an amendment that I think is very, very important. And it's not last minute. I don't know if you've been participating in any of the discussions, but this is an amendment that we've been pushing for consistently, and it's just been flatly rejected, and I don't see any basis to not call your father-in-law and your mother-in-law a relative, or your sister-in-law a relative, and I don't know why that's not in the code. And since my proposed amendment to this provision, as well as to some of the other nepotism provisions, are not being considered, I have to bring it up here, and I have to ask Mr. Leventhal, what is the rational basis to not call your mother-in-law, or father-in-law, or your sister-in-law, or your brother-in-law your relative? I haven't heard one articulated.
You're not going to get one.
Well, it's not really a legal question. It's a policy question. It's a question of where the board wishes to draw the line.
Can we get rid of that?
Oh, well, I mean, I can agree with that. I think it's a common sense question as well.
I am reading from the Nassau County Code of Ethics.
Like an idiot.
The Nassau County Code of Ethics includes particular in-laws: mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and grandparents. I'm reading from the Town of Huntington Code of Ethics. The Town of Huntington Code of Ethics defines relative as spouse, child, stepchild, dependent parent, step-parent, sibling, or step-sibling of a town officer or employee.
So I'm just wondering, does anybody else on this board think that your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, your sister-in-law, and your brother-in-law should be considered your relatives?
I don't think that that's the issue. I think the issue is that you can start out not having an in-law and then end up with an in-law through marriage. People meet people at work, whatever. We would certainly take this under consideration, but I agree with Councilman Dunn. We've spent over a year on this, and it's been a bipartisan effort. Your office has been intimately involved. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby has offered a lot of input into this. We finally have something that we all agree on, and if we decide down the road that it's important to amend this, we'll do it. But let's just pass it the way it is, because I don't want to vote on any amendments without thinking it through to see if possibly there could be some problem, because we want it to be as clear as possible as to what is permitted and not permitted. People should know where the line is. And if somebody, like I said, would end up marrying somebody that works for the town, or a brother marries somebody who works for the town, or a sister marries somebody that works for the town, I think you got to take it on a case-by-case basis. So I think we should just move this forward, and we'll take it under consideration for the future.
Thank you, Councilman. I have a slip from Diane Madden.
I am Madden Hempstead. I have to agree, I would like to see this passed, this resolution. I especially have to thank you, Councilwoman Erin Sweeney. I know you basically gave birth to this a long time ago and talked about ethics a lot, and I think that that was the path that landed us here. Councilman Diaz-Vizito, I want to thank you, although I'm a little unfamiliar with what you contributed as far as to prevent another situation like what happened to Bonnie Radafshar. Could you please explain to me a little bit more about it?
It's, I think, section 38-16, is that correct, Rich? And basically, it's a clause to protect the free speech of Hempstead employees, contractors, and others to avoid what may or may not have happened with Mrs. Radishar in regards to the memo that was possibly sent to her place of work asking that she stop criticizing the supervisor.
I thank you for that. To take it a step further, what I'd like to see happen is that an outreach is made to anyone else that they may have been victimized in the same way Mr. Radishar was. That's important. I happen to know that there are people that were intimidated by Laura Gillen, including Brian Cook from the SPCA. A few red flags went out, even when Samantha Levine no longer worked for the town and had some very strange tweets following her resignation. So I think that there could be other victims out there, and I think it's important to find that out. As far as this resolution, I agree that it can be amended in the future. In fact, I hope my proposal to Councilwoman Sweeney's office, in fact, I know it's continued to be worked on with regards to anyone, because I believe it starts at the application level. Any candidate that tries to get a job here, to me, it isn't the biggest concern about who they're related to. It's their qualifications, it's the honesty in the hiring process. Are they ethical? Do they have integrity? That is the basis for hiring employees, and certainly it's a concern, relatives, absolutely. But the only concern to me as a taxpayer is if they're not qualified. If they're highly qualified, then I've never had an argument. Again, please do pass this. Let's get it started, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from constituents on what they would like to see amended. And thank you so much.
I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there someone who would like to be heard?
Rita J. Meredith, Walden resident. The fact that we have to discuss the division and the breakdown and the family chain calls to the forefront the problems that we've had in this area, in this region, with regards to nepotism, cronyism, and patronage. So I applaud the effort that is going forward with this, but I think that once again, we're putting something on the table that's not prepared. It's like putting raw meat on the table and saying, yeah, okay, let's just deal with it for now, and as the worms just take over your insides, we'll try to fix it later. We really need to stop doing that. It's too costly for residents here. You know, those people have to work at 2 and 3 jobs when people say we need more people to come to these meetings in the middle of the morning because they're on their 2nd or 3rd job to address these types of issues. It's just disingenuous for them. I agree with the statements that Felix made earlier with regard to the lack of open discussion and involvement from the public, because we're the ones that are being impacted by all of this. You know, when Newsday catches up later with the fact that the number of relatives, again, you could have a family reunion just in the town of Hempstead or the county of Nassau with the various connections. So my questions have to do with the oversight in all of these regulations, because clearly there hadn't been any previously. So since we don't have that reinforced, that's a problem for me. I mean, I'm definitely for something being done to address this issue. But in light of even one of the appointments that's coming up, the issue of nepotism is not something that's going away. And it's not something that's going to speak to the issue that we have a lack of diversity and inclusion in this township in all areas. So why can't we put this on hold until we finally, for once, get something right? We can't continue to do something halfway and then say later on, we'll try to fix it. And then when that later on comes up and you, Supervisor Gillen, say, well, we talked about this, well, hey, it was already voted, and move on with it. We can't keep moving on with it. We cannot keep pushing the crap underneath the rug and thinking that the smell does not come up over the top. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pearl Jacobs, Uniondale, President of Nelson Garden Civic Association. I do believe that this resolution should be tabled to further discuss the issue of nepotism in the town of Hempstead. I have a background. My background is in corporate America, and in corporate America, our bylaws clearly state that in-laws, father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, they're all relatives, and we need to really address this issue of nepotism and practiced by the town of Hempstead. I do believe that everyone that comes for a job anywhere should be considered solely on their qualifications, not on their family connections. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. All right, I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
Supervisor, may I just add something to this
Sure.
discussion? I think it's important to say, and that is that this code of ethics, if it's adopted by the board, will be a vast improvement over the existing code of ethics in this town. The existing code of ethics was originally adopted, what occurred is in the 1960s, the state adopted a statewide code of ethics, Article 18 of the New York General Municipal Law. It's a bare bones statute. It's really inadequate. It authorized local municipalities to adopt their own local codes, and most municipalities, like the town of Hempstead, quickly did. But generally, municipalities adopted a code of ethics that didn't really do much more than the state law. The only really major change to the code of ethics that occurred over the years since, not only in the town of Hempstead, but elsewhere as well, was in 1990 with the adoption of financial disclosure as a result of legislation enacted by the state in the late 1980s. This code of ethics has a whole variety of sources. It incorporates all of the requirements of state law. It incorporates judicial decisions that have been made. It incorporates the literature by scholars and commentators that have written about the subject of government ethics over the years. It incorporates experiences that have occurred in this town and elsewhere and warrant being addressed by the law. It is organized in a way that is clear and comprehensive. It has a section dedicated to the code of conduct, a separate section dedicated to disclosure requirements, and a final section that establishes the powers and duties of the Board of Ethics. It's worth noting that for the first time ever in the history of this town, there will be a requirement of bipartisan membership on the Board of Ethics. For the first time ever in this town, the Board of Ethics will have the authority to impose fines of up to $10,000 for violations of the Code of Ethics. This is a law that was vetted with the Supervisor's Office, the Senior Councilwoman's Office, the Majority Caucus, and the Town Attorney's Office. There were many meetings. It went through several revisions. This has been carefully considered and developed. And like all such laws, I think it should be considered to be a work in progress. We take a step forward, we keep our eyes and ears open, we determine what improvements can be made in the future, and we proceed and make improvements and improve both town government and also the services and transparency of town government for the residents and business people in town. And I think I would respectfully ask the board to enact this law, and I think every single member of this board can feel very proud in having done so.
Thank you, Mr. Leventhal. Madam Clerk,
Supervisor Gillen.
I'd like to echo, I'm sorry, do we have a motion?
I put the motion on the second.
Okay.
Ethics.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Gillen.
I echo your sentiments, Mr. Leventhal. When I ran for this office, I noted that the ethics code hadn't been updated since 1990. It was disjointed. We did work together with your office. I'd like to thank Mitch Pitnick and Debbie Algios, also from my office, who comprehensively researched every ethics code in every municipality across Long Island and into other municipalities across the state to make sure that we have the most comprehensive ethics code draft possible. We did work together with Rich Regina and with Mr. Leventhal to come up with an ethics code that's far more comprehensive than anything we've had in the town of Hempstead before. I thank everybody who was involved in this process. I do think that there are things that could be improved, but this is a vast improvement over what we've had before, and I vote yes.
Councilman Blakeman?
Yes, and I'd like to say, in case my wife Sigal is watching, I do consider your mother a relative. However, I'm not giving her a job. I will.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
Aye. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Leventhal. You have a wonderful reputation throughout the entire state of New York for doing this type of work, so I'm happy that we were able to have you. And I certainly must thank my attorney who works with me. In addition to that, Steve Lester. Steve has worked with everyone to make sure that everything was in place. And no matter what, nothing is ever perfect, but at least we have something that, a guideline that we can go by that I'm very proud of. So I certainly vote yes.
Councilwoman King Sweeney?
This has been a long time coming. I'm delighted to vote yes, and a special thank you to Stephen Leventhal for putting up with us. Thanks.
Madam Clerk, will you call our next public hearing, please?
Proposed handicap parking on public streets in Baldwin, Belmore, Elmont, Hewlett, and Unionville.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, move the hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito? I'll come back to this. Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed revised public parking fields maps in Oceanside.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed, the proposed revised public parking field maps be adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Application of Shady Point LLC for a special exception, public garage, to permit operation of an automobile shop in Franklin Square.
Good morning, Supervisor Gillen, members of the board. Appearing for the applicant Howard Aventine, 575 Boulevard, Syosset. This is the application of Shady Point LLC for a special exception to permit operation of an automobile repair shop at its premises in Franklin Square. The premises under application is located on the southerly side of Hempstead Turnpike, 295.12 feet west of Claflin Boulevard in Franklin Square. It has a street address of 855 through 863 Hempstead Turnpike, and is also known as Section 35, Block 106, Lots 11 and 234 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. The premises has a frontage of 61.05 feet on the southerly side of Hempstead Turnpike and extends southerly to the northerly side of Liberty Place. The total lot area is 17,215.26 square feet, or approximately 0.4 acres. The parcel of property under application is zoned partially business district and partially residence C district on the town of Hempstead official zoning map. The business zone portion is to a depth of approximately 100 feet southerly from Hempstead Turnpike. It is developed with a two-story concrete, brick, and stucco building and an attached one-story masonry building. The two-story portion is being utilized for retail stores and offices and fronts on the southerly side of Hempstead Turnpike. The one-story concrete block portion is to the rear and utilized for automotive repairs presently. The existing structures have the benefit of building permits and certificates of occupancy issued by the town of Hempstead. The existing one-story concrete block building behind the storefront portion of the building was legalized by virtue of a non-conforming approval by the building department in 1987. The application is, for that and the approval is attached to the application documents filed with the board. That was under application NC 87-81, which granted the non-conforming application in order, quote, to maintain a non-conforming commercial garage, close quote, in the one-story masonry building. Page 2 of that decision states, quote, building permit number 49205 was issued in 1947 for a rear addition to the garage and extension of business use throughout the property, close quote. As a result, the extension of business use approval covered the entirety of the property and authorizes use of the entire parcel for business purposes. The applicant now seeks approval from this board authorizing general automotive repairs at the premises within the one-story concrete block building in addition, and the proposed addition in accordance with the site plans and plans on file with the building department and, of course, with the town board as part of this application.
Excuse me, Councilor. So I have a couple of questions. First of all, there are photographs that were taken by our building department that show various auto parts outside. If this application is approved, will the storage of those auto parts be moved indoors?
Absolutely. There will be no storage of any materials outdoors. That situation, by the way, Councilman Blakeman, has been remediated.
And will all the repairs occur inside and no repairs outside?
That is correct.
One other question. You have a neighbor, the Franklin Square, Muncie Park Volunteer Fire Department. I understand through my assistant, Ms. Puglisi, that they have endorsed your application. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I have a letter.
You have the letter?
I have a letter of
Can you make it part of the record, please?
Certainly will.
Is it a long letter? Can you read it?
I can certainly read it. It's a letter dated April 8, 2019, addressed to the Town of Hempstead Department of Buildings. It says, to whom it may concern. On behalf of the Board of Fire Commissioners of the Franklin Square and Munson Fire District, I am writing this letter in support of the application for a public garage to permit the operation of an automobile repair shop at Shady Point LLC, 855 through 863, Hempstead Turnpike, Franklin Square, New York, 11010. The board has been notified of the public hearing on April 16, 2019 at 10:30 a.m. Please contact me if you require additional information. Respectfully, signed by Joseph Telegrosa, Chairman.
Okay. Did you hear that, Joe? Thank you.
I also have...
And my colleagues also want to be assured that there will be no shady activity on the property.
I can't speak to that, but I think it will all be in accordance with the law. I do have copies for board members of that letter as well.
Just a quick question, if I might.
Yes, sir.
I don't see it on the map, but, you know, in view of the light that we are losing men and women overseas in war, and they can come home, their families love to see the American flag. Is there room for an American flag in the gas station?
Absolutely. The American flag will be proudly displayed either on the front facade of the building or on the roof of the building, where it will be as visible as possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I also would like to submit a letter of support from the abutting property owner directly to the south at 856 Liberty Place. It's dated April 1, 2019. I won't read it into the record, but it is in full support of the application, and I can submit a copy of that as well. And I do have photos that I'd like to hand in. These depict the remediation that I described, Councilman Blakeman, to the premises. So when you review these photos, you can be comfortable that the conditions about which you were concerned have already been taken care of. And I'll submit copies for all of the board members as well of the photographs. As far as the operation of the facility, just so you're aware, 95% of the work will be repair of taxis. The principal of the applicant operates a taxi business, and so there will be primarily the repairs of their own vehicles. There will be no auto sales of the premises, and no outside storage of vehicles.
How many employees do they currently have?
Excuse me?
How many employees do they currently have
There
on
are
the site?
9 employees, and those who drive, there's an available municipal field. I'm sure the board is aware. It's directly to the north of the premises, on the northerly side of Hempstead Turnpike. It's field FS1, which has approximately 120 spaces, and most of which allow for 12-hour parking. So it's ideal for the employees of the facility who do drive to utilize it. The hours of operation are proposed to be 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday.
Anticipate hiring any additional employees?
Not at this time, no. I think that the 9 is probably what we expect. And
well, we would be very much in favor of hiring more employees if you expand your business.
Actually, if the demand requires it, I'm sure my client would be happy to do that. I'd also like to address at this time, if I may, resolution number 10279-18 of the Nassau County Planning Commission in connection with this application. And it had a recommendation for modifications. I'd just like to address those so that the board can consider as part of its deliberations on this application the Planning Commission comments. The first one says that the site plan shows no off-street parking, so the Planning Commission is looking for provision of some parking. I would respectfully submit that in light of the available municipal fields surrounding the premises, and Mr. Sean O'Brien is here, he'll briefly testify about available parking, that really no parking is required on site.
Do you want to make that part of the record? You don't have to read the whole thing.
Sure, well, the resolution, sir?
Yeah, just make the resolution part of the record.
Surely, I'll submit a copy. And in addition, the Planning Commission suggested that the proposed addition be reduced in size. Unfortunately, to do that, it really diminished the ability of my client to effectuate what he's attempting to effectuate through this project. So I'll submit a copy of that resolution. As the board may or may not be aware, the facility that my client is relocating from to come here was at 124 Covert Avenue in New Hyde Park. That's a building that was taken by eminent domain to accommodate the third track for the Long Island Railroad. The business is in a temporary facility now and really needs to complete this process, and hopefully, if the board is favorably inclined in connection with this application, can move this process along so that he can build his addition and have his operation here. In that regard, we would request, if at all possible, that the board take action on this today, if it's feasible for the board to do so. We also have to go to the Board of Appeals for certain variance relief, including parking, in the event the board is inclined to approve this application. At this time, if I may, I have Sean O'Brien, who will make a brief statement about existing.
Before he makes a statement, I'd like to know if you have any place there we're going to put some flowers or trees or something so that you make the place look nice. What are you planning to do?
Well, there's really, I don't know, Councilwoman Gusti, if you. My client just advised that in terms of the rear of the property where the public really doesn't go, it's really just an area where the employees are, that's really not suitable for that and wouldn't have any positive impact. But on the turnpike, there are existing trees and there are beds of earth around those trees that can be fortified with flowering plants and things of that nature, which my client would be happy to provide if that would be acceptable.
And the concrete looks like it's kind of worn. It doesn't look like something about that.
So I didn't hear.
The concrete itself.
Oh, the kind in the front of the building? The front of my client advises in the front of the building, its appearance on Hempstead Turnpike. I have some photos that depict that. They've been recently done. And since we're on Hempstead Turnpike, we would require state DOT approval to do anything with any of the sidewalk in front of the building. If I could submit these, Council, we do speak. I think get a view of the front of the building. It does create a positive aesthetic on Hempstead Turnpike.
What am I looking at? I don't see what I'm asking for.
That's photos of the front of the building on Hempstead Turnpike.
I'm talking about your building. This is where your building. This is your building?
Correct.
Okay. Since you can't do anything, I don't see the place of flowers or anything. You could put some planters there.
We can certainly do that.
You can do that.
Absolutely.
That is.
Thank you.
Morning. So, just echoing what Senior Councilwoman Gooseby said, so would you make part of your application that you would put planters in and maintain them in a healthy state?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you, because we share Hempstead Turnpike and we're all trying to improve that corridor, so I'm glad you brought that up, Senior Councilwoman.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Sean Moran Engineering, Officer at 1225 Franklin Avenue in Garden City, New York. I'll try to keep this brief. One of the things that I think is coming up today is that there is essentially two halves to this building. One half is storefronts that are directly on Hempstead Turnpike on the sidewalk. In the rear of the property is an existing auto repair building that the applicant is looking to expand. The expansion, once again, is due to eminent domain or a closure of the existing facilities that they use or used to use on Covert Avenue. Covert Avenue was closed on Monday and will be closed for several months, and that building has been raised in order to provide for the construction of those improvements. The applicant does have auto repair here. It will continue in that operation. The operation has vehicular access onto Hempstead Turnpike via cross-access agreement. So the property itself that fronts on Hempstead Turnpike is building. It is not a driveway. The driveway onto Hempstead Turnpike is actually a cross-access agreement with the neighboring properties. This site does have access onto Liberty Place. Liberty Place is a street 1 block south of Hempstead Turnpike. It leads directly into the firehouse. The firehouse now subdivides Liberty Place, where the trucks will pull in from one side and pull out the other side. So on this side of Liberty Place, the trucks will exit. There are 4 overhead doors. One is an ambulance door and 3 are fire truck doors. On the opposite side of the building, there are 3 doors so the fire truck can pull straight through where the ambulance backs into the building. They are the neighboring property to this site on Liberty Place. The other property owner also put in a letter of support. The access to the site is provided on Liberty Place and through cross-access directly onto Hempstead Turnpike. As mentioned, this is primarily for the vehicles that are operated by the applicant. The applicant has several taxi cab companies that he operates. This is a facility in which those cars are maintained. In order to maintain these cars, he's able to schedule when they come and when they go, so he's able to control the traffic flow in and out of the site. He doesn't want to overburden his own facilities, so he has them come in when the lifts and other mechanical equipment is available. There is places on site for vehicles to park, however, they do not meet the standard criteria dimensions of a standard parking space that you would have at a shopping center or somewhere else. So they're not included in our calculations, they're not provided as on-site parking. However, you can store cars in front of the overhead doors and within the buildings. As we mentioned.
And none of your vehicles will block the ingress and egress of the emergency vehicles and fire vehicles?
Absolutely not. That is a street that is behind our site. There is parking restrictions on that street. And once again, this is an existing operation that we're looking to expand, but we're looking to maintain the same traffic flow in and out of the site. And those trucks pull directly out onto the place behind the site. And we haven't had any issues. The applicant's been there for over 20 years.
So in your opinion, would this application, if approved, have any material deleterious effect on traffic?
No, we're not.
Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our application. We have a representative of the applicant here, Lawrence Blessinger, who is a principal of Shady Point LLC. We also have Anthony Di Properzio, who is the project architect, in case the board has any questions that would be appropriate for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony Di Properzio?
He just signed it. I don't think he intends to speak. He's the project architect. And
okay.
if the board has questions, I'm going to have that.
What about John McCarthy?
Hi, John McCarthy from the MTA, 2 Broadway, New York, New York. I'm just here to provide any background on this application and in support of consideration of this application. Just a little background, as you heard, the relocation is basically because of the work we're doing on Covert Avenue in order to replace what we consider the at-grade crossing, which is at times dangerous and certainly causes loud noises from all horns and whistles. So the applicant has been working very closely with us and New York State DOT and Nassau County and other entities to find relocation. We made a commitment at the beginning of our project, which is eliminating grade crossings and adding a 3rd track on the main line, that we would completely have 0 residential property takings and limit any commercial property takings. We've been fortunate to limit it to only 4 full takings. And in the case of this applicant, we are taking a partial easement, a partial taking and a temporary easement, so the building had to be taken down and the business relocated. But our commitment is to keep this business in Nassau County, the town of Hempstead, and we respectfully request that you consider this application.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. I'm glad you're here today because it gives me an opportunity to raise an issue with you with the MTA. The people of Elmont, Franklin Square, and North Valley Stream are without a train station. It is a big hardship. You are talking about a lot of people in Elmont, Franklin Square, and North Valley Stream, probably close to 70, 80,000 people without a train station. We're one of the few communities that doesn't have a train station. You have a site at Belmont Park. I know they're talking about developing it, but I would love if the MTA would consider, whatever happens at Belmont Park, that we get a full-time train station with dedicated parking for the people of Franklin Square, Elmont, North Valley Stream. So if you would bring that back to the MTA, I would be very happy, and I know my constituents would.
No, I appreciate that. I will bring that back to the MTA and to President Phil Ing. It's certainly something that we're very aware of, the needs in that area. It's a very commutable area if you have a train service, and so we will continue to.
I believe that's under consideration right now, isn't that correct? Thank you.
While you're at it, could you do something about congestion pricing and the governor's attempt to continue to tax
Not on this agenda item.
I'll also bring that back.
Thank you.
Pennsylvania, we have a big capital program coming up, and there's major commitments to the Long Island Railroad in that. As you know, the existing commitment is there of $6 billion over the last 2 capital programs. So there's a lot of work going on, and we're very hopeful that the result will be a terrific railroad that's very strong on time.
But we should have had a terrific railroad to start off with, considering the taxes that we pay here in the town of Hempstead. We passed a 4% tax cut, and we live within our means, and we would hope the governor would do so as well. Thank you.
Aren't you glad you came here, Mr. Burke?
Yeah.
Come back soon.
Thank you.
Okay, I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Yes, Supervisor, I move that the public hearing be closed and that the item be adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman. Aye. Councilman Diaz-Padrón.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Councilwoman Kingsley.
Aye. Madam Clerk, will you call our next public hearing, please?
Application of JAB Gasoline Enterprises, Inc. to convert an existing automobile repair building to a convenience store and construct a canopy over existing pump islands, as well as maintain existing ID sign and operate self-service near Island Park.
There we go, it works. Good morning, Supervisor Gillen, honorable members of the board, Madam Clerk, Council, Kevin.
Good morning.
From the firm of Murphy, Barnes, O'Brien, offices at 22 Jericho Turnpike, Mineola, New York. And just a quick side note, congratulations on the adoption of your ethics regulations. Great to see the board work together, and also even maintain a little bit of a sense of humor at the same time. So congratulations to the member of the public. It's just great to see.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
I also have here with me this morning Mr. Mark Pilata. He's a licensed professional engineer. He's from Prime Engineering. They're the design professionals which have prepared the plans which are before the board. And if I may, this is an application which involves an existing gasoline service station, which is located at the northwest corner of Austin Boulevard, Kingston, in Island Park, also known as 4290 Austin Boulevard in Island Park, and obviously it's in the unincorporated area of Island Park, thus giving the board jurisdiction of this location. And essentially, the applicant, who is the owner of the property, who we are representing, is seeking to convert the existing service page into a convenience store, eliminate the repair of motor vehicles, and erect a canopy over existing pump islands. I'd like to just give a brief sort of overview and a mini history of the location and sort of why the need and why we're here and the relief we're seeking. Essentially, it's an existing gasoline service station, typical 1950s, 60s service station, 28 by 58, which makes for an 1,800 square foot building, built in around 1960, located in the underlying Business X zoning district, though they did come here before the board in the 1980s for a town board resolution, including the subject property within the GSS zoning district, which is the correct zoning district for gasoline service stations. At that time, they made an application to replace some of the existing underground gasoline storage tanks, and the premises had operated pretty much with a similar operator for quite an extensive period of time. Sandy hit, did get damaged to a certain extent. It wasn't horrendous, but it wasn't good. And the operator of the service station, which essentially was operating a quick lube facility, purchased the property to the north, built a facility for just quick lube only, no longer no gas station. This premises remain. He operates that business to the north. This is an existing gasoline service station. And about 2 years ago, in accordance with the county's requirements to replace single-wall underground gasoline storage tanks with double-wall fiberglass storage tanks, 2 underground gasoline storage tanks were installed at this location, one 20,000 gallons and one 15,000 gallons, which is a compartmentalized tank for having both premium and diesel. So the premises as it currently is situated and is configured has 4 pump islands with 1 multi-product dispenser per island for use of whatever grade of motor fuel the motoring public would desire, including premium and including diesel. Just a little bit more about the site. The site has 2 curb cuts on Austin Boulevard. There's 1 curb cut on the side street, which is Kingston, and actually behind us there is we actually have 3 street frontages. There's industrial place behind us, and sort of as the name sort of reflects, the area itself is principally a commercially utilized and improved area. So most of the other businesses
Like across the street, you have Speedway. There's another service station to the southeast of us. There's a restaurant. And a lot of auto body type of uses, auto-related uses in this particular area. So as I was mentioning, so the proposed improvements that we're seeking at this location would be to put a canopy over the existing pump islands. There are 4 pump islands that will not change, and to convert the interior into a retail space. There'll be no servicing of automobiles being proposed at this location. We did see that there was an inspection of the premises. There were a couple of violations on the site. A number of them I would just categorize as paperwork, and I tried to explain this to my clients with limited success, in that when the underground gasoline storage tanks were put in, they never closed out the permit. So there's some close out type of things. And then I did notice there were some things with respect to in between your means of egress from the building. They had like stored some cardboard boxes and the like, which could present that hazard. That's all been, being a volunteer firefighter myself, don't like to see anything impeding the egress of the building. So we've addressed those concerns also, but I think there was some stuff cluttered around some of the fire extinguishers also all have been addressed. So that's really what we're seeking to do in a nutshell. Basically, the building itself, the perimeter of the building is going to remain the same, so it's an 1,800 square foot building. We're not going to change that. I have, and the one thing I'd say I'm a little bit of a work in progress, but I'm trying to work with the architect on this, and this is just me, and I could be wrong on this one, but as much as we're approaching a beach community over there, my recommendation to the client in connection with this, and I think they're listening to me, is to use like a hardy plank or something like that, kind of give it that sort of a little bit of a feel to it, when you have sort of multiple layers. I'm recommending against a stucco type of building, which you see at a lot of particular. So I'm working on that. I just think it would be kind of a nice gateway into the Island Park over there, beach community. So that's we're in that sort of process. Like I said, we're not changing the physical aspect of the building, but I just think I personally would just like to see some sort of little architectural upgrades like that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Just a couple questions.
Sure.
So the 10-minute oil change to the north, the applicant is also the owner of that?
Previously, that owner owned this particular property. No, I'm sorry, didn't own it. He was a tenant at this particular piece of property. He bought the property to the north, so he's no longer the tenant here. He now independently owns and operates that location to the north.
Okay.
No relation now whatsoever to this particular piece of property, other than being a former tenant.
Okay, so now in the building, on the parcel that we're discussing, you're keeping the 2 bays?
What we're proposing on doing is eliminating all service bays, all repairs, and having the entire inside of the building. The inside of the building is approximately, well, I should say, the 4 corners of the building is 1,800 square feet. When you get down to the interior space that will be utilized as a convenience store, you do have a utility room, you've got restroom, you've got the light. So you probably end up within a neighborhood of about 1,250 square feet of usable retail space. But there would be no repairs or lubricating of motor vehicles at this location.
And how many pumps are you keeping?
There'd be 4 multi-product dispensers at the location.
Same location that they are in now?
Same location, they're exactly there right now.
Okay.
Just no canopy.
Just a couple questions. Yeah, good.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. You mentioned moving away from stucco for the exterior of the building structure. Are there plans to improve, enhance the beauty and the appearance of this station? And Senior Councilwoman Lucy asked the last applicant to put in planters, something that could make this a little bit more attractive.
Absolutely. What we're looking at with our design professionals, like I said, I kind of like the beachy sort of thing in the area, so I'd be looking in the corner to see if we could put some beach grass or something like that. I recognize, and I've discussed this with our design professional, that we do have limited site size and ability. Nevertheless, I still think that we can do something out the front, a little bit towards the back, in the landscaping type, as well as even have where sometimes what you'll do is, and he chided me, but that's okay, he's right, I have to listen to my professionals, because I said, well, how about like underneath the canopy, we could put like some pots and stuff like that. And he says, the sunlight, all my...
We do like palm trees in Island Park, just
So I think that on the exterior of some of the pump islands, we could have some, possibly those would be in pots, we could have something there. But I certainly agree, because it makes all the difference in the world.
And just to address some of the violations that are on the site right now, there's a bunch here to go through them all. Are they all being taken care of?
All being addressed. Like I said, a number of them are, like I say, for instance, they say, okay, we're operating a convenience store. We do sell, quite frankly, cigarettes, lottery tickets, and Snapple. To me, it's not, but we're here to address that. And
just especially the safety issues. I guess there was no fire extinguishers, electrical hazards. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but less than a year ago, there was a tanker fire directly across the street from this location.
I'm very aware of that. I saw the videos on that as well. And fortunately, the beauty of the day and age that we live in right now is that the technology is incredible. So now what could have been devastating, now you got like these breakaway hoses and all this sort of stuff. So what could be, devastating, actually, Island Park Fire Department did a tremendous job in taking care of that. But fortunately, nothing really happened. I looked, and it was the first thing I went to when I saw that there were some violations. Safety is obviously paramount. There were fire extinguishers that were there. There was stuff underneath them. Okay. There was that 3-foot clearance, all been addressed.
Listen, as long as the violations are getting taken care of, along that corridor, Austin Boulevard is a tough area to keep clean. I ask that, local businesses do their best to maintain the front of their stores. You're in an area you have Jimmy Hayes right next door. You have the Pearl restaurant that just opened. Across the street is Grand Paradiso. You're right in the area of businesses, Artie's Collision, Pumas. They all really do a great job of keeping their storefronts clean. I know that Industrial Boulevard, which is immediately to the rear of you guys, is an issue, and we have trouble with the fire trucks getting down there when there's a fire. So my office is pretty hard on Industrial Place. So, please don't keep cars back there. Please don't keep garbage back there, and just do your best to keep the area clean. Plants, flowers. Island Park's a beautiful community. I'm born and raised there, lived there my whole life. We encourage new local business, but we want to make sure that they're keeping our communities clean, the sidewalks clear of obstruction, so bike riders can make their way to Long Beach and enjoy the boardwalk.
Absolutely. Early.
If I may, I know you're limited space, but is there room for?
Already done. I've got, it's going to be between 18 and 20-foot pole with a 3-by-5-foot flag.
Accomplished. Thank you.
If there's anything further from myself or my expert, otherwise I would just say...
One more thing. Certainly. The clothing box.
I believe it was removed. If it wasn't, it will be because...
I'll pass by on the way home, but just please...
Yeah, now I believe it was too small to have a bunny, so absolutely, that'll be removed.
Yeah.
Yep,
no need.
Absolutely agree. Now this be, like I said, I want this one to be one that's going to stand out, one that everybody will be proud of. I think you're looking for it.
It will be.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm sorry. I know I mentioned before, but just it wasn't in the actual plan. So if you can submit it sometime in the future, is the landscaping plan.
Yes,
whenever you get a moment, please submit it so we have it.
I will do that. I have, if I could just submit over 250 signatures in support of the application.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any slips of this public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and we reserve decision.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakely? Aye. Councilman Diaz-Pasino? Aye. Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Take care.
All right, that concludes our public hearings. Madam Clerk, will you please call the administrative calendar?
Yes, Supervisor. On the administrative calendar today, there are items 10 through 43. I also have a resolution that is of an urgent or emergency nature. This resolution is a resolution authorizing an intermunicipal agreement with the North Merrick Fire District for the purchase of a used 2006 Chevrolet Trailblazer. This will be item number 44 on the calendar.
Would any of the council members like to sever any of the items on the calendar?
If I could just give an explanation on 44?
Sure.
Why it's an emergency. So number 44 is an intermunicipal agreement between the town of Hempstead and the North Merrick Fire Department to purchase one of their old chief's cars for our EMS department. They are in need of a car, of a vehicle, and instead of purchasing brand new, this is coming from the North Merrick Fire Department at a cost of, I believe, $2,500. It already has the stickers and lighting on it that it will need, and with the summer season coming, we just don't want to see the truck be sold to some other person or municipality.
They added that North Merrick Fire Department sits in my district, and we are more than happy to support this.
Okay, may I have a motion on the administrative calendar?
Motion? I didn't read it yet. Okay. You ready? Okay, I move the administrative calendar from 10 through 44, with the exception of item number 20, which I move be adjourned without date.
Second.
Okay, I have a number of slips of people who'd like to be heard. Valerie Lamb.
Administrative calendar.
Can you tell me what number 23 is? I'm sorry, I was in the ladies' room. Oh, Muscarella. Got it. Sorry, thank you. So I understand that Mr. Thomas Muscarella is up for appointment to take over Mr. Ambrosino's seat, correct? Is that happening today?
Yes.
Okay. I know that there's been a lot of discussion in the past regarding this very issue and special elections. I don't really have a clear understanding in terms of the cost-benefit analysis. I do know that my mother has worked for the Board of Elections every election for as far back as I can remember, and every location, I know they pay those people who work there all day, right? So every location has, I don't know how many employees, and then I believe there's additional costs after that for the counting of the votes, right? Can anyone tell me how much a special election would cost in a district, ballpark?
It's roughly $100,000 per councilmanic district.
Okay, and that usually brings out how many voters? 100,000? Brings out how many? No, we don't know. I know it's a small turnout, right? Usually for special elections. Okay. You know what? I have to say this, and I'm not trying to insult anyone here. I'm not. I'm just trying to give you kind of what I think is a clip of reality. Most people don't know who their local representatives are. They don't. And I have this weird approach that I take, and I just ask people random questions. I could be standing online at CVS, or I could be, walking into a meeting, and I'll just ask random people, I'm curious, do you know who your local representatives are? Most people don't know who the Secretary of State is, or if you watch News 12, they ask who's the Vice President. A lot of people don't even know that on the highest level. So my point is, I hope the board does appoint him, because what I don't think is good is for a councilmanic district to have no representation. And if this is the option, then I think it's a good thing for people to have someone to call and to have someone to email. And for me, I'd like to meet with Mr. Muscarella, assuming he does get appointed, specifically about the animal shelter. Even though it's not in his district, he will be voting on these things. So I'm just saying, let's have the district have representation. And as far as everyone getting their name out there, I'm happy to talk to you about some ideas that I have in terms of helping people know who you are. Okay. Thank you.
Aubrey Phillips.
So good afternoon.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Aubrey Phillips, Elmont, New York. I am here as Vice President of the Parkhurst Civic Association, a small civic association of about 900 families. And Ms. Joyce Stowe, who left because she had to do parking tickets, not parking tickets, but certainly parking, fill the meter. I'm here on behalf of those families to say that we reject the idea that you will appoint Mr. Muscarella, a familiar family name in light of what we heard on item 5 of the discussions earlier. I would like to ask a question, and the question is, if there's anyone sitting behind me that is a member or a resident of the 2nd Councilmanic District, any of you voted for any of the members of this board? Okay, good, so there's one. The point here is this. I certainly, and neither did any of the residents, or most of the residents in my district, did not vote for any of you. Whether we share some fictive kinship or not. As such, we don't see how any of you can decide for us who represents our district. We understand that as a body, you come together and you make decisions for the town of Hempstead. So my job here today is to say that since none, I certainly have not asked or had the ability to cast a vote for any of you, as an individual, I certainly am here today to say that in addition to not having voted for any of you as an individual, I want to make it clear that as a collective body, I do not grant you permission as a voter to tell me who should represent me in my councilmanic district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Tabby Williams.
Good afternoon. I'm Tammy Williams, Elmont, New York, also a board member of Elmont Parkhurst Civic Association. Just wanted to say good afternoon and thank you for having me here today. Speaking on item 23, the appointment of Thomas Muscarella, councilperson for the 2nd Council District. As you know, I speak quite fluently in the language of gerrymandering. Elmont has 2 council members, Representative Blakeman and no longer with us, Edward Ambrosino. Can we wait till November? Yes, we can. Do we need a special election? No, we don't. Why? Because neither gentleman represented Elmont to the fullest because of partisan gerrymandering. If we need to get a problem resolved in the town and in Elmont, we call the commissioner directly. If we need our garbage picked up, we call sanitation directly. We have a good working relationship with the commissioners. If there's an issue in Elmont, can we rely on our councilmatic district representatives? No, we cannot. Gerrymandering has led us to, one, taxation without representation. Our parks look bad. Erin King-Sweetie mentioned on her Facebook that she was able to get 2 brand new parks. Well, Elmont hasn't even received one. That's due to gerrymandering. So a special election, you can save the $100,000, maybe invest that in Elmont Road Park. As far as representation, again, we can wait. You don't see a lot of us here because a lot of our families work during the day. Can you come to Elmont and ask them their opinion? Can you come to Valley Stream, North Valley Stream, and ask their opinion? Come at nighttime when most people are available. And the ones who are not available, it's because we have law enforcement, we have healthcare workers. We need a fair process. Democracy is all about fairness. And anyone who votes to appoint someone to a board lacks integrity in my eyes. Because I have not seen the majority of this board walk through my community. I've seen the supervisor walk through my community. If I need something, I go to my senior councilwoman, who doesn't even represent Elmont, to get things done. So the reality is, you haven't represented us in decades. Don't do us any favor by appointing someone. Either you can wait to November or wait to fair redistricting. And what you can do for the last 15 seconds I have is fix the charter when it comes to fair redistricting. Give people a voice. We have the intelligence to pay our taxes. We have intelligence to vote. Thank you very much.
Ms. Williams, I'd just like to state for the record that I have no recollection of you ever calling me to accomplish any of the things that you would like to accomplish. Other people in Elmont have called me. As a matter of fact, yesterday I spent 5 hours on Elmont talking about various issues that concern the people in that community. And by the way, we have spent millions of dollars on Elmont Road Park, a place that I grew up playing basketball in almost every day because I lived in adjoining Valley Stream. So if you feel that you're not being represented, pick up the phone, call my office, I'd be happy to help you.
Okay, so I'm in Edward Ambrosino's district because as I stated before, we're gerrymandered. Do you have a woman in your office that begins the letter with a D?
Yes.
Okay, so I have her on email. I actually did call your office in regards to Tudor Manor section, which you represent behind the park, and she was able to get the business owners to cut the grass and landscaping. So yes, that's one issue because I had to go outside of my district, which is the Ambrosino district, and call your district to get someone to maintain a certain property. So you and I can exchange our numbers and we can have a conversation about Elmont, but I need to see more action done, and putting someone on a board, just to have them on a board, is not fair representation. We have to handle gerrymandering first and foremost. So nobody passes the buck to...
We can agree to disagree on that, but thank you so much, and feel free to contact me.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Tweedy.
Good morning. Thomas Tweedy, Floral Park, New York.
You need to disclose that you're a candidate for this seat.
I am indeed a candidate, Democratic candidate for District Council 2. Resolution 23 states that by reason of Ambrosino's resignation, a vacancy exists on the town board. The resolution fails to mention, however, that as a convicted felon, he was required to vacate the office. While he did not wait until his actual sentencing, the fact is that his constituents of our communities have not been someone qualified to represent us for at least the last 2 years. To suggest that we cannot now wait until November for a full and fair election by we the people is both ironic and offensive. One compromise would be to hold a special election in conjunction with the June primary elections that are already scheduled and budgeted for, so there would not be the expenses which the board members claim are the reason for not holding such a special election. We the people want to make our voting decisions. It is also disappointing that we are once again going to see yet another example of the same old names and games being played out, demonstrating the nepotism, cronyism, and favoritism that has corrupted our town. During this most holy of weeks, the stain of this tainted seat and this tainted process will not be washed away today, but we the people will rise up in November to end this town's long nightmare. Resolution goes on to say that the temporary appointee is qualified to fill the vacancy. The record shows that he may be the least qualified person ever proposed to the board since the 6 council districts were set up. A review of his public statements and engagements suggests that his most significant public service has been being involved in Little League Baseball. Tubman Lasorda famously said, "There are those who make it happen, those who watch it happen, and those who wonder what happened." When it comes to stepping up to the major leagues as a town board member, the Republican candidate has at best been a disengaged spectator to our important public discourse most of his public life, his adult life. Unlike Teddy Roosevelt, he gets no credit for being in the public arena. The Republican candidate may have been a fine Little League leader, but for the major issues facing our town of Hempstead, he simply has not been in the hearing room. Never mind at the microphone or in the middle of the debate. The Republican candidate has been missing with his inaction. The fact is there are hundreds of current and former elected officials within our town who have been fully scrutinized and gone through the election vetting process, from fire district members and elections, village mayors, state and federal elections. For the other board members to present us someone who has not even been the president of his neighborhood civic association is pathetic. I again implore you to consider the compromised special election in June and provide the transfer of power where it belongs, with the great arbiter, the ballot box, the vote of the vox populi, where the vote of the vox populi is heard.
Thank you, Mr. Tweedy.
Mr. Tweedy, before you step away, I have a couple questions for you. On April 11th, you stated that every single GOP councilman on the town of Hempstead board was placed there before being elected. This is a quote from your Facebook page. "This is exactly why I'm running for the town council. We need to restore integrity to local government. Laura Gillen was the beginning of that restorative process. Elect me in November, and I'll help that process along." A day later, the supervisor described an appointment to the town board as disgraceful and un-American. You gave your comments today, and you quoted Tommy Lasorda. And I want to point to one important point of that quote, where you said, "Wonder what happened." Well, I wonder what happened when you gave that statement. You failed to tell the community, you failed to tell the town of Hempstead, and you failed to tell the people of the 2nd District that you, in fact, yourself was appointed to the Floral Park Village Board. Not only were you appointed by Mayor Ann Corbin in April 2001, and then following your appointment, you rose through the ranks, and in April 2011, you appointed Kevin Fitzgerald to fill your unexpired term, and then you weren't done yet, and in November of 2014, after Mary Grace Temecki resigned, you then appointed Lynn Pombagno. So my question to you is, in 2011, or I should say in 2001, when you were appointed to the village board, obviously it was a little different because you were rising up in power, you were gaining a seat, and there was no complaints then. And I find it ironic and disgraceful, un-American, and quite frankly, completely hypocritical that you would be critical of his appointment.
May I respond?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the facts say it all.
Significant difference between the two, sir, is a 2-year term versus a 4-year term. It's a significant.
We're talking about the appointment to a board. Let me just finish. We're talking about an appointment to a board, okay? The months that you were appointed in April. Why not have a special election? You appointed someone else in April. Have a special election. You appointed someone in November. Have a special election. And I know the village elections are different than general elections.
So therefore, the election process is a 2-year process. Dominic Longobardi, for instance, was elected in December in March of his two terms. Each of those terms, he had a full board. In my situation, and in this, with Ann Corbett, when she was elected, I was not running for election as there were no seats available to be run for.
When you were appointed to the
Councilman
Diaz-Pasito, please let the
You
gentleman
announced
finish
I
his
was
statement.
appointed in April of 2001. The election was held in March. The first Monday in April are when village appointments are made. At that point, there was an opening in the village board of 2-year elections, and I was appointed. Not an election year, it was 2-year appointment.
But you were okay with the appointment then?
I accepted the appointment, that was all.
And just to be clear, the statement, and I will actually say this, I actually give credit to the supervisor because she is against appointments, but at least she owns it. You do not. You're against appointments when it doesn't benefit you.
But since you said it's disgraceful and un-American for him to accept an appointment, I guess you'll...
No, I'm quoting, you are disgraceful. You said that accepting an appointment is disgraceful and un-American. So in the words of the supervisor,
I do believe that you quoted me, but I think, again, you said it was disgraceful, and we can look at the record. Maybe you could read the record.
no, I was quoting you. What I said was completely hypocritical. It's hypocritical that he was okay with being appointed himself and then appointing 2 people to the village board. But today, because he's not the one being appointed, there's a problem.
Hypocritical, disgraceful, and un-American. So if it is hypocritical, disgraceful, and un-American, then I guess you're going to be voting against this appointment, since that's...
No, I'm absolutely not. I agree with appointing people to the board, and I
Because
stand...
you were appointed.
That's fine. I was appointed.
Supervisor Santino, when your father was his chief of staff.
Okay, my father didn't have a vote, so I don't know what that has to do with it. Right now, we're talking about Mr. Tweedy being...
No, we're talking about people being appointed to seats.
Okay. Well, I said my point. Obviously, you think that the terms in office differ from the appointment. The issue is the appointment. That's the issue, and that's that.
Mr. Turi, Michael Turi is the next slip.
That's what you get for giving her a compliment.
Hi there. Thank you very much, Madam Supervisor.
If you just state your name and your address for the record.
774 Addison Street, Woodmere. How many people sitting on this board were elected to their first election when they filled this office?
2.
Show of hands, maybe?
No, 3.
She's not on the town board, she's the town clerk, but 3 people sitting at the dais.
Yeah, I was talking to the town board members. How many people, I understand,
Okay, but I just wanted to straighten you out. I don't know how I got here in the first place. A lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. That's how I got here, okay? Are you familiar with that?
I am, yes.
All right.
It created, it ended at-large council persons and created councilmanic districts. I am aware of it. Thank you very much.
I got here.
Okay.
Otherwise, I probably would not be here, and neither would they.
Okay. Well, is the potential incoming appointee in the room today? Is Mr. Muscarella here? We're asking the board to vote on someone, essentially giving them a job. Did they show up to it?
I believe he's here.
If he is approved by this board, he will be sworn in immediately. He will take a seat and he will sit through public comment.
But you didn't feel the need to sit through this public comment? To hear from people before he took an oath of office?
I'm confident he's either watching or listening right now.
I'm less confident. Let me,
Well, I have a little better knowledge than you do, so let's take it on 90% that he's either listening or watching.
I appreciate that my time gets done. Let me continue with how many people from the legislative district that he will potentially be appointed to have spoken already at this point today? Anyone know? All right, we were asking their
two, and maybe you.
Okay, I'm not in this district, so I couldn't speak to that per se.
They weren't in the district, you're telling me.
Mr. Phillips is from Elmont.
But he's not in the district.
Ms. Williams is from Elmont, and she said she was in Councilman Ambrosino's district. Mr. Tweedy is clearly within the district, and I don't know if you are, Mr. Turi.
I'm not. I'm in Esposito's district. So 2 people have gone on the record, maybe 3, that will stand in the record about this potential appointment. We're talking about putting up American flags, and yet enfranchisement, what the American flag stands for, does not seem to be the course of action when you fill people to seats that they are about to be or wish to be elected to. I can't say that someone will be elected to it, but I do believe that when someone has the incumbency advantage prior to their election, they're given an unfair layup into the seat. I fear that will happen with Mr. Muscarella. I don't know what his particular qualifications are. I believe he runs, just what I've read, he runs an insurance company. He's a Little League coach. Those are good qualities. I don't know exactly how they make someone qualified to be a town board member. That being said, I'm going to end it there. The people have the right to choose who their representatives are. They don't necessarily want people telling them who they're going to be. Finally, I just want to ask may I ask a question on additional item? While I'm here, number 18, about the North Lawrence and Inwood overlay. Mr. Blakeman, I was fortunate enough to attend the fine community forum that was held at my kindergarten, number 4 school. And I would just ask, it says that there's going to be a public hearing, I believe it is was it on May 7th? So the May 7th meeting, as of right now, as is this one, as is the one after it, are all in the morning. Would you say that the majority of the residents who live in that district can get off of work to come here and put their opinion on the record of the transit overlay?
Well, that's a very good question. And as you said, you were at the meeting that we held in the evening. So we held an evening meeting.
That's right. It was very informative.
We are not required to do by law, but I thought it was important. Not only do we hold a meeting in the evening, we went the extra step and provided direct notice to the surrounding community by sending them a letter informing them of the meeting so that they would be available. We also had an evening meeting with key stakeholders. We met with the MTA, we met with Nice Bus, we met with the mayor of Lawrence, we met with the mayor of Cedarhurst, we met with the Inwood Civic Association, the Lawrence Cedarhurst Fire Department, the Inwood Fire Department, and a variety of other stakeholders in the community, which we had at night, and we had a meeting at that point and discussed it. With respect to your specific question, we have found that there is no material difference whatsoever in attendance at meetings in the town hall for regular board meetings, whether it be at night or during the day. It's usually the same amount, or pretty close to the same amount of people. So we did have evening meetings, and the public has been informed, and we've had no secret about what we want to do. And I'm very happy that my unofficial poll is that 95% of the people that live in that community are for it.
Okay. I don't directly live there, so I couldn't speak to that, but I will say that I thought the meeting was informative. I appreciate that things were sent out to inform the community of the meeting. I guess, would it be possible to send something out to whoever all the residents about the May 7th public hearing so they could potentially come to that if they don't know about it already?
Well, we'll think about that, but we don't want to get in the practice of doing it. It's very expensive. We wanted to do it one time before we had the public hearing so we would get the community's input if we had to tweak anything, and we have tweaked some of the plans based on some of the public comments. So if we start doing that, it would get too expensive because every application you can say that we should mail to people, and it's about, I think, 50 cents a letter, so it's kind of expensive. But thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time to hear me speak, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conroy, if you would please come forward for a moment. Good afternoon, Mr. Conrad. I think we are in afternoon, yes we are. So I just have a couple of questions about some of the personnel actions that are in this agenda. And I just wanted to confirm with you that all of the personnel items that have been put forward by the Parks Department, you signed off that there's no funding. Is that correct?
I did.
Thank you.
And I want to add that my responsibility is to determine if there are funds available, and it is limited to funds availability.
There are no funds available for any of the personnel actions that are being taken by the Parks Department.
Correct.
Also, I brought with me my budget for you. Ms. Hanson, would you mind handing this to the commission, please?
Excuse me, Supervisor, if I just might interject, there are no funds directly in the Parks Department, but as you explained at the last meeting, at the end of the year, we settle up between various departments.
I didn't explain that to you. You explained that. I did not explain that.
I didn't say you did. He did. Or he did. No, he did. You explained that it's normal operating procedure for most municipalities to settle up at the end of the year. We're looking at various departments. Some will have a surplus, some will have a slight deficit, and then we settle it and we prepare the next budget, correct?
Correct. I think it's very important.
So it's not that we don't have the money, it just might not be in that particular place. And if there's a need that we didn't anticipate when we passed the budget, we shouldn't be paralyzed by that if there are sufficient funds in other lines that we can settle up with at the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yes.
But is it fair to say, Mr. Conroy, that the reason you develop a budget is to project where you'd like to be and the amount of money you'd like to spend each year? And as individual homeowners, as individuals, and as a municipality, we should try to live within a budget, because you set a budget because that's your expectation of what you're supposed to be spending each year.
Budget, Supervisor, in all due respect, is a projection. It's exactly what you just laid out.
It is a projection, yes.
It's a projection.
But is it a projection? Do you make projections so you can just say, well, we don't really care about these numbers, we'll just spend and spend and spend, and it doesn't really matter?
No. The Comptroller's Office puts forth a very responsible projection, a budget. In fact, we've been cited often as to our conservative practices regarding budget.
And would you say it's conservative to try to live within the projections in your budget?
I'm sorry?
Is it a conservative practice to try to live within the projections that are in a budget? Is that fiscally responsible?
That is fiscally responsible based on how you laid out your projections. Things change during the course of the year. One thing is we don't know, I don't have it in front of me, how many retirements happened in the Parks Department.
Mr. Conroy, if you could pause for 1 minute. I think Mr. Sammy delved into this issue to determine whether there would be money available. Mr. Sammy, would you come forward and tell us why you signed off on this?
Because he's a crony.
Good afternoon, Supervisor, members of the board. I've been Director of Human Resources for 32 years. Each year, we have obviously approved personnel changes to the current budget at the time. It has never been a problem historically because, as Councilman Blakeman just described, there is a reconciliation that takes place at the end of the year where money is moved around to cover unanticipated expenses in the personnel lines. Life has a way of interfering with our best laid plans, and we adapt to it, and we have methods to adapt to it. In this particular instance, there are 5 resolutions from the Parks Department on the personnel calendar. I took a look at the retirement so far to date. I looked at the less savings that were projected for the Parks Department. That was $1.4 million. To date, I believe there's almost $800,000 in retirements that have been realized, and we're not even halfway through the year.
In the Parks Department?
Right. So I believe that the town of Hempstead will function correctly and appropriately with having to amend the budget here and there to meet the needs of the department.
But under the concept of less savings, we're taking money out of the budget because people are retiring, but we're not supposed to be replacing those people. So I don't understand how you're saying because they're retirements, there's additional money in the budget, because we're not supposed to be spending that money under the theory of less savings.
Many of these actions are less than the amount we're realizing from the retirements. And as I have said, historically, there's an end-of-the-year reconciliation, and to my knowledge, it's never been a problem.
Okay, so projections don't really matter. We don't have to live within a budget. Let's just throw anything out there. With respect to the budget, Ms. Hanson, do you have the budget? Oh, yes. Mr. Conroy, could you please take a look at the budget? I've tried to flag the area for you to make it a little bit more convenient. Can you please tell me where in the budget, if anywhere, a second deputy commissioner in senior enrichment is budgeted for? I mean, this move was not discussed with my office. The paperwork came over on Thursday. Can you please tell me how there is funding to support this move of Ms. Puglisi from Councilman Blakeman's office to become a deputy commissioner in senior enrichment? Because based on the current employees, full-time payroll in senior enrichment is projected to be over budget by $3 million. And because of less savings, only 2.8 roughly is budgeted. So how can you say there's funding for this move?
Before Mr. Conroy,
I'm asking you a question.
I understand, and I certainly respect your right to ask that question. I'm sure he'll answer, but beforehand, I'd just like to set the stage for what occurred. First of all, Debbie Puglisi has worked for me in excess of 2 years. She works more than 40-hour weeks. She probably works 50 to 60-hour weeks. She is the lowest paid chief of staff or executive assistant or whatever the title is for any member of the board. And basically, I discussed with her a raise, and I discussed with her additional duties, and she indicated to me that it was her lifelong dream to work with our senior citizens, and that she had an affinity towards working in senior enrichment. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, a close friend of hers that she took care of in the community, I think she was like 90 years old, passed away. Debbie was the primary caregiver. So this is something that she wanted to do, and I enthusiastically support her, although I'm going to be very disappointed and at a disadvantage not having her working for me, because she was outstanding in her work, especially constituent work, as Ms. Williams indicated. So she had this dream. My understanding was that the money was available, that the title was available, and certainly people who excel here in the town of Hempstead should be entitled to pursue their dreams and advancement. So I enthusiastically supported it. So, Mr. Conroy, you can answer the question, but that was the premise of why. And I will tell you, she was by far the lowest paid person doing the same work that anybody else did on the fourth floor.
So I'll just respond to that. Maybe all of that may be true. Certainly I support the workers of the town of Hempstead seeing their dreams and their career advancement fulfilled. 8 Tosner people were rejected by this board last week. Their dreams were not fulfilled because they've been waiting for years to become full-time from part-time. And in terms of Ms. Puglisi, this is no comment on Ms. Puglisi. She could be the most fantastic worker we have here. What I'm asking is there's nowhere in the budget for a second deputy commissioner. And none of this, I never heard anything about these dreams until right now. And I heard this was never discussed with me until Thursday when I got the paperwork for this. I do have to correct something. I think I misspoke. The current payroll in senior enrichment is budgeted and projected to be over $3 million. But because of less savings, only $2.8 million is budgeted. So now we're adding another employee. So I think I may have misspoke. I just want to clarify that. So just, if you could tell me, is there anywhere in that budget where a salary for a second deputy commissioner in senior enrichment is budgeted?
Supervisor, can we just go back to the numbers you just cited? Because I kind of disagree with what you just said.
Ms. Smith,
budget.
could you please step forward? Thank you. You can respond to the commissioner.
Why don't you let him answer, and then Ms. Smith can add.
The total budget in senior enrichment for the labor dollar, salary and wages, grand total, $3,287,000. Part and parcel to that is less savings being retirements that we anticipate during the course of the year, that we will avoid those salaries. That's $320,000. Prior to less savings, had that not been factored in, the total salary line would be $3.6 million. I think you had mentioned a number of 2.6. I just wanted to, for the record, clarify that.
Mr. Salmon, will Mr. Puglisi be the lowest paid deputy commissioner in the town of Hempstead?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It's not about what her pay is comparative to other deputy commissioners. It's about whether or not this is something in the budget, whether this is something that we anticipated. The commissioner of senior enrichment didn't say when we did the budgeting process, I need a second deputy commissioner. We're creating a position that's not budgeted for to fill Mills Puglisi's dreams. I have no problem with her having her dreams fulfilled and moving over to senior enrichment, but we have to have the money for it, and there has to be a position available. Ms. Smith, can you speak to those numbers, please?
Use the microphone.
Mr. Sandlin, would you let Ms. Smith sit there, please? Please speak into the microphone, Ms. Smith.
So, the adopted budget has a total budgeted payroll. Now, payroll has several components that are not budgetable. Longevity, part-time, and the buyback. So all of that is included in the $3.2 million currently budgeted for senior enrichment. The line for full-time, which is where we are adjusting for less savings, because presumably it's the full-time folks that are expected to leave, that number was grossed in the budget at 3.17 with less savings, which was $330,000. The budgeted number, the new budgeted number is now 2.8 million. Looking at the folks who are on staff today, we will end the year at 3 million. So we are trending to be over budget, strictly on the full-time line. Now, if you take all of the payroll, no, we're not there yet, but if you look at the full-time, which is where the less savings adjustment must be made from, you will be over budget on the senior enrichment full-time line.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
So, Ms. Smith, I have a question for you. You're the person responsible for preparing the supervisor's budget, is that correct?
The supervisor doesn't have a different budget. There's only one budget.
No, the supervisor has to propose a budget under town code.
Correct. Along with the
she will propose a budget, correct?
In conjunction with our controller, we worked collaboratively with our controller and with every commissioner in the town of Hempstead to come up with a budget.
Ms. Smith is your representative in that group, correct?
Ms. Smith is my financial advisor.
Okay, so let's not play games. She is, right?
Stop playing games.
I'm assuming, yes.
There's no games.
No, I'm not questioning your qualifications. I just want to know, you're the one that's responsible.
Right?
You're the one that's responsible to bring it all together, to put forth the supervisor's budget.
Again, I work very closely with the controller's department, yes, to put that together.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's not a trick question.
Okay.
So basically, do you anticipate that based on what you've seen so far in the first 4+ months, that the supervisor will be proposing a tax increase? Or will the supervisor be proposing a flat tax or a tax cut?
We haven't even begun preparing our budget.
Let me finish. If we're in danger, do you anticipate that at the end of the year, we'll have to, the supervisor will propose increasing taxes?
Ms. Smith, I'm going to tell you not to answer that question. We're not going to make guesses of what we're going to do with the budget.
Her lawyer. I'm sorry. She got up at the microphone.
And she's talking about the numbers in the budget.
She's qualified. Don't act as her lawyer. I'm sure you can answer the question.
With the adjustment of $8.1 million that was made by the board, looking at payroll every week has become something that we are doing to make sure that the supervisor gets to what the board has restricted as the amount for payroll. That means that perhaps she has to cut back on some of the spending in order to get there. I don't think there's been any thought.
To get where?
To live with the less savings number that you put into the budget.
To live with the 8.1 million that was adjusted to the amounts that totaled the full-time salary in October.
Do you know who the rating agencies are? Are you familiar with the rating agencies?
Oh my God.
Are you speaking of Moody's and S&P? Yes, I am familiar.
So their outlook was positive.
Absolutely.
So is there any reason why you would disagree with them, or do you think we're going to have a positive outlook this year?
I think, again, respectfully, you have to manage the budget, and part of what the supervisor is doing is managing. The budget doesn't just happen.
There's nothing, excuse me, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Finish.
No. The supervisor can't just sign off, at least as the person who gives her some guidance on financial matters. She can't continue to sign off on positions that were not budgeted and expect to be where the board would like her to be based on the adopted budget.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
There's nothing right now. There's nothing right now that's alarming, correct?
No, let's not.
Other than the fact that, you know, the state wanted to take $4 million in aid away from the town. But other than that, there's nothing that's alarming.
If we look at on a departmental basis, there are some departments, because of significant payouts, that are in trouble, frankly. Hopefully, spending restrictions and spending restraints in other areas will get us to where we should be for the town.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question, if I may. Mr. Conroy, obviously, you know your history. I have full faith in the work that you do. Ms. Smith, I don't know you that well. I know from your resume you've worked in other Democratic administrations. But just asking both of you in your years in practicing municipal finance and putting together municipal budgets, is an end-of-year reconciliation accepted practice?
It is.
Thank you.
And can I make a few comments regarding what has been said here in the last few minutes? With regard to less savings, it's interesting that we bring that topic up now because I was going over the numbers with my staff this morning. Less savings in the budget was $8.2 million, which is a reduction in the salary line for what we anticipate to be retirements and/or those who leave service with the town of Hempstead. We are better than halfway home. We're more than $4 million in avoided salary, and that's only after the first quarter of the year. I think, and I argued vehemently during the budget process, that the appropriate thing to do is to factor in less savings, because we know during the course of the year, and we have history in this regard, that we will have retirements, and the budget does not call for a partial budgeting of a position. It calls for the full year. So less savings is in fact the appropriate thing to do.
Actually, Mr. Conroy, when you prepared the budget with us, we took less savings out. It was Mr. Mastro Marino who put less savings back in.
And I agree with the position that he took, and again, I stand behind that, and the numbers will, in fact, prove out. In fact, in the prior budget, 2018 budget, we factored in $10 million for less savings. The actual number, and Supervisor, I have a meeting with you next week, it's $11 million. We did $1 million better than we had projected, and that's in line with conservative budgeting practices that we do.
That's because I was managing the budget, if that is in fact true. Thank you, Mr. Conroy. Thank you, Ms. Smith. I'd like to thank you for keeping a careful eye on payroll and trying to make us live within our budget. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Procacci?
Felix Procacci, 1165 Barnes Street, Franklin Square, New York. Since we're talking about budgeted positions, Edward Ra and his wife were both given jobs to positions that didn't exist in the budget prior to their hire, and his wife actually 2 times when she got transferred to the Civil Service Department, that position did not exist. So, you know, that's a fact. And then Mr. Blakeman, who represents everybody, I called him 5 times during the budget week, and he didn't respond to any of the calls, so I am not represented anyway, so that's a fact. And I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from you.
Never called me or my office. So don't come here and lie.
Yeah.
Because your credibility
Go
shot.
away. Go away.
Let Mr. Procaci finish, please.
Go away.
Mr. Procaci.
I agree with all the comments Tammy and Aubrey made. The cost of a special election would be prohibitive, especially in this case where there will be an election seat in November. The fact of holding on to Michael Deary for an additional 9 months, holding on to Cheryl Petrie, which she has held 4 different positions in the last, I guess, 18 months. And so we don't know where to put her. That was $135,000, $150,000 at least for Michael Deary, not including the benefits. That more than pays for many special elections we could have. But we are only budgeting for stuff that we care about, and we don't care about special elections. And Angie, as for leaving it vacant, everybody here was fine when Angie Cullen for 6 months was absent without leave. So the idea that we care about, that we care about this is
Angie Cullen. She has since passed away. She was an amazing public servant, and she wasn't feeling well. You are out of line.
I'm not criticizing her.
You're out of line criticizing the memory of Angie Cullen. Stop it and apologize. You are rude. Stop it and apologize.
I'm not criticizing her.
She was sick.
Yeah, and you replaced her in July when you knew she was sick, and now wait till so you can get a job the following year.
That was a discussion between
anyway,
the councilwoman Angie Cullen and her doctors and their HIPAA laws. Please be respectful. You have crossed the line and you are rude. I believe Mr. Procaci was making the point that her seat was vacant. I don't think he insulted Ms. Cullen. It was not vacant. She was there. She happened to be going through some medical issues which were none of your, it has nothing to do with you. And she has since passed away. She's an amazing public servant. So stop being rude.
The Gillen versus Town of Hempstead litigation that the town is now thinking about appealing is going to cost tens of thousands of dollars, probably maybe even $100,000 if they go ahead with this. This is more money that's unnecessary. And the ironic thing about this is the town is, if they go ahead with this appeal, is going against their own interest because they're giving away something that was never negotiated in a fair negotiation with the CSEA. It was never a fair negotiation. They opened the contract before.
Are we still on the administrative calendar?
I'm trying to speak, please.
I don't even. The union contract is not on the administrative calendar.
We're talking about the course of a special election. That's the statement made by in Newsday was the people who are for this.
You were just talking about the.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Mr. Procaci, please calm down and just finish.
No, because I can't talk.
Felix, it's holding me. Keep God.
Just shut up! Just shut up! I'm done!
Happy Easter, Felix.
Go to hell.
Mr. Procaci, if you speak out like that one more time, you're going to have to ask me to leave.
How about everyone else who spoke out?
Please, let's behave in a civilized manner. Do not scream out from the gallery. If you scream out once, you'll get a warning. If you scream out again, you'll be asked to leave. Ms. Thomas?
Excuse me, is this about the hiring of the assistant director?
I have you for, yes, number 32.
Thank you for that. Good morning, everyone. Barbara Thomas, Massapequa, New York. And I'm here to support Ashley Barron's. I'm very excited about this, resolution to hire her at the town of Hempstead. She has a proven record of success. She's awesome with people. She's awesome with animals. And she has a tremendous support system here on Long Island. And I support the resolution, and I thank you. She's awesome.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Marie? Michael Mazur? Mita Meriday?
We're on the admin calendar.
Yes, we're on admin.
Been a while. Yes, okay. With regard to my ongoing request on these contracts that I have asked, it's a simple ask for these contracts that are being awarded, if we could possibly designate if it's an MDE, WBE, service disabled veteran-owned business, so I can at least have some hope that there's diversity. With regard to the procurement process overall, I had a question about number 28. I just wanted to get some details.
So on that item, number 28, we already approved this sale of the property. It was subject to an appraisal. We got competing appraisals. We came to a fair market value. The problem, this is really just correcting the prior resolution that authorized the sale and the purchase of this land. It did not specifically authorize me or anyone else to execute the deed. So this is just giving authorization to the board to do that to complete the sale.
Okay, so the purchase and everything, the transaction has already occurred?
Yes.
With regard to that? Okay, and so the funding for that is applied to what? I mean, is that considered a gain, or?
Do you have the recollection of what the price is for that parcel? Does anybody, Mr. Roth? It's about $55,000.
For 32,000, for 32,000?
It's underwater property.
As most of our residents are every time a storm hits, I guess. Okay. And does that remove us from the responsibility as it pertains to the taxes?
It's municipal property and it's relative to city law.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Mr. Payne said it's municipal property and it's now going to be conveyed to Long Beach.
Okay.
So it was never on the tax roll.
Okay. Okay. Definitely I'm encouraged with regard to the upcoming overlay projects. But again, my request is consistent with regard to having procurement that is inclusive, and hopefully that within the code of ethics, since the discussion has been focused more so on employment and family relations, I'm hoping that the vetting process, the review process also entails that with regard to procurement, and that we look at the qualifications and the diversity and inclusion versus the family relationships. The upcoming hearings, I am also very encouraged by that and look forward to working with all respective entities for the hearings on May 21st and those further as pertains to development efforts that are inclusive of other aspects, residents who are trying to make a difference within the community. So I am encouraged by all of that. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, before you leave, could you, my aide is here, and I'd like you to give a phone number we can reach you at, so we can discuss further the disabled veterans.
Sure.
And the veteran-owned businesses.
Sure, no problem. But as I said, we have a few seconds left. I would again like to see within these proceedings, at least to give residents who are not able to be here, and I've been one of those who've been vocal about having more meetings in the evening, more outreach. Everyone's not just going to the website. You know, we have to get a broader scope. I appreciate the town clerk's efforts in increasing language as far as multilingual. We need to address that. We need to make things a little bit more responsive to residents so that they can get here, and particularly including these things that are giving us an opportunity to say that we do reflect the diversity within the community, because right now I don't see it. But I also appreciate your efforts with regard to the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Diane Madden?
Hi, good afternoon, Diane Madden. I would like to also speak on the hiring of Ashley Brenz from Brookhaven. I do support this resolution. I think that many of us have been on the edge of our seats because we were told that Christy Fonte also applied for this position. I think this board has come a long way, and I think also that she's going to need your continued support. She's going to need authority. What I do like about Ashley is that she ran a very cohesive volunteer program in Brookhaven. It's quite an embarrassment, not to me, but that the union president had to come in here and point out the bullying and the intimidation as if she doesn't have enough to do and enough to carry being the union president. That's quite an embarrassment. However, I'm glad it's addressed. The lack of volunteers being here to support Ashley is a little concerning, but not surprising. Of course, we're going to be looking immediately at her philosophy. She comes from a government shelter, which has some pros and cons. Sometimes people that come from government shelters are used to the mindset of compensating to be successful for the failure of other employees to do their jobs, such as trainers, anyone that is not competent to do their job. I hope that's not her plan. I'm hoping that she's not going to continue the pattern of sending our animals from one cage to a crate to warehouse somewhere. I'm hoping that her philosophy matches ours and that her standards and her expectations in animal care and welfare align with the people that have come here since 2010 to speak on their behalf. I also hope that she will bring even further transparency. Where our lives are concerned, everything needs to be in the open. Nothing should be in secrecy. Nothing should be in the back, out of the hands of people that care about those animals. That shelter should be transparent, and it should start tomorrow when she starts. Hopefully, that's the direction I hope this board will go. I do hope that they will keep their commitment if Ashley does the job that everyone's expecting her to do, to move Mr. Pastore out of our animal shelter and move him. I don't care where you move him. I don't want to pay a salary particularly, but keep him as far away from animals as you possibly can. Lastly, I hope that Ashley understands that although the many people that come here and speak about animals primarily speak about dogs, they actually have cats. We actually care about those cats. We want those cats having the equal opportunity for medical treatment, for placement, and anything that those cats need equal to what the dogs have been receiving. Thank you, and I encourage you to pass this resolution. Look forward to moving forward. And I hope, by the way, Ashley will pick up the phone first thing, and number one, demand that there's no politicizing our animal shelter anymore. Number two, that she gets on the phone with two people that are out right now that are so distraught emotionally from what's going on at that shelter. And they're animal lovers. And I hope she'll pick up the phone and say, I want you to return because we're now on the upswing. Thank you.
Mary Ellen Gray?
Mary Ellen Cray, 436 Locust Avenue, Uniondale. Two items. I've never been in favor of appointments to political positions, and so I definitely oppose this particular appointment. And I think that the suggestion of putting the special election or a special election with the primary would work very well and save the funds. The other item is number 27, which is about the St. Michael's home, and we had been very much involved earlier in learning about that and are in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. Ms. Defina?
Good afternoon. I'm also here speaking about item 32, about the hiring of Ashley Behrens for the assistant director position. I do not know her. I'm just reading different comments about her and listening to what people know of her, and it sounds very promising. But my concern is anytime you hire someone, how is it going to work when you still have the majority of people in there who are working against those policies, working against you? How is someone going to come in and be successful? Just as when you came in, Supervisor Gillen, we had high hopes for you too. And then look what happened. Within a couple of weeks, it seemed like your whole administration went against us and made us suddenly the enemy, the people who were fighting for the animals for 10, 15 years prior to you ever existing. So how can, I no longer have hope in one person coming in, because just like when you came in, your administration and your liaison, everybody was brainwashed, and the inside people at the shelter who have the control, who have always had the control, have information and feed people lies and brainwash the entire staff. Is that going to happen again? So I do not understand how anyone can be successful under that roof until you remove the poison that has taken over that shelter. And it starts with the story, and there's a couple more right behind. So that's just something I'd love for everyone to think about, because what's going on in that shelter is far more dangerous, and to think that one person is going to come in and try to fight against all those people who are holding their ground and are going to do everything to destroy her will be impossible.
Thank you, Ms. Defina. I do not have any other slips on the administrative calendar. Is there anybody else who would like to be heard?
Supervisor, at this time, I would like to move the administrative calendar with the exception of item 20, that be adjourned without date.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Supervisor Gillen?
I vote yes on the administrative calendar, with the exception of I vote no on item 23. As I have stated very clearly, I am not a supporter of appointments to the town board. I don't care what other municipalities do, but I disagree with this practice, especially in towns like ours where we have councilmatic districts. To have members of the board select a representative for residents that they don't represent is wrong in my opinion. That's why I put forward a resolution to call for a referendum to let the voters decide if they want to bear the costs of special elections in order to have the benefit of choosing their own representative. In further attempt to give the residents their say, I will put forward another bill, which would have called for another appointment. I put forward another bill, which is to call for everyone to agree to not appoint someone who is a declared candidate for a seat, to not give a declared candidate the power of incumbency. Unfortunately, that proposal was voted down. Today, the majority has put forward Mr. Muscarella, a declared candidate for the town council. I urge all of the members of this board to reconsider. Anointment by appointment is wrong in very many ways. Business as usual move should not happen. Voters have the right to choose their elected officials, not you. Granting incumbency to someone already on the ballot sends a message that this town doesn't want to change, but our residents know and they want better. They will see through this move as they are seeing through so many things that are going on here in Hempstead. An administration that wants to be accountable and transparent to representatives. I do not support this move to tip the scales in November. I also, on item number 32, I vote yes to everything except for all of the personnel actions related to the Parks Department, because as the controller indicated, there's no money in the budget for these moves. I have the responsibility to administer the budget and try to live within the budget that we have. So the fact that we can move money around at the end of the year is of no comfort to me. I also vote against the transfer of Ms. Puglisi to the Senior Enrichment Department. Again, I have no issue with Ms. Puglisi, and this is no comment on her work performance, but the Senior Enrichment Department is projected to be over budget on full-time salaries. This addition will put them further over budget. In all my discussions with the commissioner over the last year plus, the department, the Senior Enrichment Department, has repeatedly asked us to help get them folks to deliver services to our seniors. They've asked for bus drivers. They've asked for program aides. They've asked for people to deliver services to residents, and I agree with that focus. The budget put forward by the town council cut full-time payroll and senior enrichment by $330,000, making it difficult for us to serve our seniors as we need to. If money is going to be spent, and we're going to be moving money around after the fact, it should be spent on service delivery staff, not in unbudgeted management positions. So I vote no on that, and yes on everything else.
Councilman Bladen?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Mazito?
Before I vote, I just want to make another comment on the appointment of Mr. Muscarella. Much has been said recently by Supervisor Laura Gillen and Mr. Tweedy regarding the desirability of holding a special election to fill the vacant second council district seat. However, it is fair to ask the supervisor and Mr. Tweedy where they stood and what actions they took on the issue of appointments to vacant elected offices in the past. The following are just some appointments that we've seen in the recent future. Veronica Lurvey was appointed to the North Hempstead Town Board to the 4th Council's district seat in January of 2019, which was vacated by Anna Kaplan upon her election to the State Senate. Barbara Underwood was appointed Acting Attorney General on May 8, 2018, when Attorney General Eric Schneiderman resigned in disgrace. Rather than attack a political appointment, Supervisor Gillen posted congratulations to Underwood in tweets. Kirsten Gillibrand was appointed to the United States Senate by Governor Patterson in January of 2009 to fill the vacancy created when Hillary Clinton was appointed Secretary of State. Peter Zuckerman, North Hempstead Councilman for the 2nd District, was appointed to the North Hempstead Town Board in January of 2014. And like was said before, but I did leave the part out, Ms. Gillen's running mate, Tom Tweedy, was appointed to his first public office as a Floral Park trustee by former Mayor Ann Corbett in April 2001. And then as mayor, Mr. Tweedy not only appointed 2 members of the village board, as I stated earlier. One is Kevin Fitzgerald in April 2011, the second, Lynn Pombano, who was appointed in November of 2014. But there was a third to fill the trifecta, and that was Mr. Archie Chang in February of 2016, with an election, a village election, just a mere 1 month away in March. Quite hypocritical, Mr. Tweedy. I vote aye.
I'd just like to point out, I am not the governor of the state of New York, nor am I the supervisor of North Hempstead. I have no control over what the governor does or what the supervisor of North Hempstead does. As you have acknowledged, Mr. Diaz-Mazito, I have remained consistent in my position against appointing people to elected offices.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Yes. Councilwoman King Sweeney?
Aye, and congratulations to Tom Muscarella and his beautiful wife, Rose. It's a pleasure to see you, and I look forward to serving with you and to continue to save the taxpayers of the town of Hempstead money with our tax cuts.
Supervisor, I move that we adjourn the meeting and that we recess for 20 minutes so people can use the restroom, get some nutrition, and our new councilman can be sworn in.
Second.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman? Aye. Councilman Diaz-Mazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Oh, she's not here. Councilwoman King Sweeney? King Sweeney?
Aye. Sorry.
Okay, everyone, we're back on the record. Actually, we're not on the record, but we're back in session for public comment. The first slip I have is from Felix Procacci.
Felix Procacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square, New York. I'd like to point out with our new ethics law on page 14 on investigations, if you violate any rule, it says that would be an ethics violation, and Mr. Diaz-Mazito, Mr. Dunn, Aaron King Sweeney, and Mr. Blakeman, by interrupting me, by not asking the supervised permission first, which is a rule in Robert Rules of Order, they violated our ethics law. So we didn't have to wait very long before the ethics law was violated. I pretty much guarantee you, if I made a complaint and showed the video to the ethics board, as soon as they're appointed, that they're going to dismiss this out of hand.
I welcome you.
But you regularly, the town board regularly interrupts me and doesn't ask permission from the presiding officer, which is the rules.
That is not an ethics violation. Stop it, Felix. Come on.
According to the rules that.
No, it's not according to the rules.
Once again, you interrupted me,
me.
you violated the rules again. But anyway. Also, another thing is, we voted on Chapter 90s very often here. And Channel 4 News did a piece, and I actually got the paper from Nassau County Department of Health that we should not be doing Chapter 90s until the rats are eradicated from a building. So by us passing a Chapter 90 law before the exterminators have deemed that that place is rat-free, we're violating Nassau County Department of Health rules.
I believe the Commissioner, you're well aware of this requirement, and we're taking care of the rat situation. Is that correct, Commissioner?
So that's correct, Supervisor. We will not demo a house until it is rat-free.
But once again, at the last hearing, that wasn't, a lot of people were concerned about the rats, as I would be if someone had a house in that condition where there was tons of rats. Before you eradicate, probably the most effective way, I guess you could do it without doing it, was cleaning out the house, cleaning out the debris where the rats are living, where there's food for them, feces, whatever it is, where they live on. You would have to clean out the house first, I would think, to most effectively eradicate the rats. Why would you leave their nest if it's really 2 feet of garbage where they can live? It's much more difficult to eradicate them. So I hope in the future that before we pass Chapter 90, before we pass the law, that we make sure that we do our due diligence and whatever process it is in the town to get rid of the rats on those properties prior to passing the Chapter 90, because you're kind of putting the cart before the horse when you pass the Chapter 90s first. And, it's done a lot because of the outrage of the community, but I noticed that, the Uniondale community comes in here and is outraged about many buildings, and some buildings stay up for a very long time. They just don't come in with a bulldozer after 2 years and bulldozing. Not that, I'm not saying it's appropriate or not, once again, we didn't eradicate the rat problem in Garden City South, and yet we voted on the Chapter 90.
Through the chair, if I may, Madam Supervisor.
Yes, Councilman.
I want to follow the rules before I interrupt you. These homes that are being taken down, sometimes there's squatters in them, and they're not structurally sound, and it really is dangerous, or teeny parties happen there, and somebody could get hurt, so the town of Hempstead would be held liable if they don't take the house down. So it's not just rats as a reason for taking the homes down. There's a major reason that, God forbid, something happens to somebody there because of the structurally unsound. We have to do something proper, otherwise we'll be held liable. So that's it's not just because rats, it's because of multiple reasons why these houses are being disposed of. Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, the proper thing to do, which is done on the zombie houses that existed on my block, are that they are properly boarded up so that squatters can't get into them. So that's a first process before you decide to demo a house.
Thank you, Mr. Procacci. Janice Blake.
Good afternoon. My name is Janice Blake, 1293 Pike Street, Elmont, New York, 11003. Hello, Ms. Gillian. I was awarded the Volunteer of the Year Award this around Christmas time, so congratulations to see you again. I'm a trapper. I trap stray cats, and I take them in, have them neutered and released. And today I had a problem, and I'm really upset about it. I went to the town of Hempstead in Wantagh with my cat, and he was already done, but he wasn't breathing properly. And I thought, well, I'll take him in and have him medicated, and then I'll turn him back out when he's better. So I took him in there, and Maria and Steve decided to take him in. They went in the back, and they asked the vet, should we take him in, and they took him in. And then they made me sign a paper that said, Steve said, you may not see him again. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And which means if he's too sick, they'll put him down, or they might find a home for him. But he was already ear tipped, so he was already evaluated as to not being able to have a home. So I drove away and I went back and I'm like, you know what, can I just have my cat back? I'll medicate him myself at home. Oh no, you can't have him back. The supervisor says you can't have him back. So I was like, okay. And I'm kind of new at this.
I just want to let you know, and you can stop the clock. I'm hearing about this for the first time, so I didn't communicate about this particular situation. I'm hearing about it right now for the first time.
Right? Okay.
So, please continue.
She's been hearing about this for 2 years.
Okay. So anyway, so I went back again, and I said, could I speak to the supervisor? Because I really want my cat back, because I didn't have a good feeling about it. And so I waited there, and Mr. Pistori came out. I didn't ever saw him before, and he said that they take the cat in, they evaluate it for 5 days, and I'm like, evaluate it for 5 days? He's sick today. So I didn't understand that. And then he said if they decide that he's feral, they'll get a rescue group come and get him. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? Why don't you just give him back to me, and I'll turn him out where he belongs, you know, where he lives. But he'll be healthy. So I didn't understand why he did that, and they didn't give me my cat back, and I'm starting to think that they already put him down, because this was about an hour later, and I'm really concerned, and I would like to have my cat back. Is it possible that you can call them and tell them to give me my cat back?
Commissioner Marino, can you look into this situation with this lady?
Yes, we'll look into it.
If you would just speak with Commissioner Marino.
Case number.
Okay, if you would just give it to Commissioner Marino.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, where did you say you're from?
I'm from Elmont.
Elmont, thank you.
If you would,
Can I finish what I'm saying first?
yes.
Yeah, I'm not finished. Okay, so another thing is, as I said, I do TNR, and there's this place over by where I live, it's called Franklin Square Senior Center, and it's got a bunch of cats, and they're breeding. And I took some traps over there, and I put them down, and I trapped about 6 cats, maybe 7, 8. And I got them fixed, and I turned it back out, and I got a call from the guy, and he's like, we don't want you on our property. So I'm like, you know, you should be thanking me. So anyway, there's still cats down there running all around, breeding. They have like a breeding operation over there. And I just want to help get the cats done. So maybe you could say something to John, who works there, that allow me to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for your dedication to our animal shelter. I appreciate it. Please speak with Mr. Marino, or you could speak with Mr. Lockeruba, giving the case number.
Okay.
Thank you. Quintina Tenney?
How you doing? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. If you would just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Christina Tenney, and I'm a resident of Tiny Hempstead. I want to say I don't know where to begin, but I do know where to begin. Freeport, Roosevelt, Hempstead. I know Freeport's not your district. Freeport, Roosevelt, and Hempstead. Housing. We are overcrowded and underfunded. Overcrowded and underfunded. We have no housing. I've reached out to several people regarding housing, and I'm being told there's no housing. I've run into people in this neighborhood, in this town, Hempstead, Freeport, Roosevelt. There is no housing. We are overcrowded and underfunded. I'm quite sure everyone on this panel before me knows that there is absolutely no affordable housing. And if there is 3 to 12 year wait list for housing. 3 to 12 year wait list. There's women and children in these shelters that are paying to be in these shelters. Well, we have people knocking at our borders to get in, and we have people that's around and out there bound, just doing whatever they can to get these people in here so that they can house them. And they're coming into our lower income communities, like Hempstead, Roosevelt, and Freeport. We're already suffering. We are already suffering financially. We have no housing. There is no housing. What is anybody going to do? What can be done? You know, you don't understand. I myself is looking for housing. This is what I'm doing. I went from management companies to real estate companies to just walking in stores, putting up flyers. talking to people, asking for housing, begging for housing. Women are giving empty Section 8 vouchers to do what with? There is no housing. You know what? I randomly stop people, women, let's say, and I ask, are you someone that you know related to affected by housing? Everybody's affected by this. Nothing's done. I watched a couple of years ago. I lost a rent subsidy. I lost it. Why? Because I didn't fight. Because there was no housing. I was told there was no housing. I watched as Hempstead got together $2 million I believe it was $2 million. Correct me if I'm wrong. They got together overnight, within a week, $2 million to open up the school across the street for a bunch of people that just come here and demanding that their children have a place to go to school. My grandparents are from here. My mother's from here. I was raised here. Something needs to be done. We need housing. And I'm not even finished yet, but we need housing in this community. We need some affordable housing. Everything's depleted here.
Ms. Tenney, I agree, we do have a problem in Nassau County with the lack of availability.
Resorted to at the county protesting quietly at the county executive office, and I will continue. If I got to go lay down in the middle of the Southern State Parkway to bring some kind of national attention to this, I will. And I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Something needs to be done. We need answers. We need answers. We need help. We don't need to be a roundtable discussion. We need help. I'm begging you, and I'm out here representing other women with children. We need help. And it's a shame that we have citizens, women and children, being charged to live in a shelter. This should be declared an emergency. There should be some emergency funding coming from somewhere to help us out here.
Ms. Tenney, I agree with you that we have a crisis with the lack of affordable housing. In your particular circumstance, if you would see Rebecca Sinclair, she will try to help you.
What can she do for me? Because I've been seeing everybody. I've gone down the list. I've seen everybody. I reached out to Dr. Boothby's office. She was very helpful. Their office was very helpful, but nothing amounted to it. I reached out to NAACP. I reached out, and nothing. Nobody's doing anything about it. And then I want to ask a question too. And I know this is not your district, and I don't know, but I just want to put it out there. You have the Moxie-Baby projects in Freeport. Not you. I know this is not your district, but they're taking the residents of the Moxie-Baby projects and they're putting them across the street. From what I've understood, I've been down there asking questions. Not everyone is going. They're steadily trying to evict people. Is this going private? Are they only going to give like 15% of the units to the affordable housing? They're just going to go private, and then they're going to sell the land that they are to some developer to put up condos while we're in a housing crisis?
I don't know the specific facts of that case, but I can look into it for you. If you just see Ms. Sinclair, what we can do is try to help you. I have to know more about your circumstances.
I need help, but I'm here for other women.
I understand that.
I'm here for others that are
and we're trying to create a climate where where we can get developers to come here and invest in affordable housing so residents can stay here.
Ma'am, if I could add, I represent about half of Freeport. I share it with the senior councilwoman, Gooseby, and then the other two neighborhoods you mentioned she represents. And as a Republican, I'm telling you your comments are 100% accurate and valid. And there is sort of a big picture way to solve this housing crisis, and that is to lower the tax burden. It is to stop congestion pricing. It is to stop Governor Cuomo's efforts to tax us to death and have all people move out of New York. A lot of our young people are fleeing the state because of this incredible tax burden. And what you're creating is an environment where there is not affordable housing. There are not opportunities for the young. So I agree with you 100%. I'm happy to meet with you. I know Mayor Kennedy in Freeport is doing an amazing job. He's been a phenomenal mayor there, and I think he's trying to really move the ball in that respect. But what we need to do is look at our zoning laws. We need to bring economic development.
You know what, I'm sorry, Ms. Sweeney, but you know what, when you say, it's not even about, like, to me, zoning or what district you're in or whatever, it's about that we need the help. And
well, there are ways to help you. I mean, I'm trying to, but for example, take Baldwin. So you have you have a downtown that has been desolate for about 20 years, Grand Avenue and Merrick Road, and the board has been moving forward with an overlay district in Baldwin that is going to create, hopefully, a lot of economic opportunity for the folks in Baldwin.
When you say economic opportunities, I just want to ask you this as well, economic opportunities. Like I said, I grew up, I'm 48 years old. I grew up in Roosevelt, Freeport, and Hempstead area. and I'm watching my community be re-gentrified, slowly but surely. If any of you notice, that there's only, like, if you go up and down Nassau Road, I don't know if any of you travel, but up and down Nassau Road, we have like what, maybe about, if I could say about maybe 10, you see how many businesses up and down Nassau Road, 10 businesses that are like black owned, you know, and the rest is like Hispanic. You know, and then I call all about fair housing, and I'm calling, and everybody saying, well, we work with everybody. That's not, you're not working with everybody when we see in the makeup, we're being forced out. Everybody can't fit in Georgia. Everybody's moving south. It's ridiculous.
I know, that's why we need to do things like we're doing in Baltimore with the overlay zone. You can have mixed-use development, and things like that do create opportunity. I mean, right now you have empty storefronts, right? So we're taking tangible actions to change that, to bring mixed-use development to downtown Baldwin. But in your specific situation, I am more than happy to meet with you to figure out if there's a way that we can help you specifically. But in a broader way, I genuinely believe we need to look fresh at our zoning code to see how we could help bring more affordable housing to the town of Hempstead.
Housing, and also, I'm talking, it has been, in my search, I've been discriminated against. The majority of the apartment buildings here in Hempstead are ran by me, I'm talking about my experience, are ran by the maintenance guys who I ran into nothing but Hispanic maintenance guy. And I'm not talking about, I'm not trying to be, whatever the word is, but I'm just being real and just giving you what I've been going through. And it's, the protocol is to get an application from them, fill it out, give it back to them. Where's the application going? Who are you calling? When you call, nobody's heard of you. You know, but you're constantly seeing Spanish moving in. This needs to be, this is real issues that need to be talked about and addressed.
I agree with you.
This is a real issue.
It's a real concern in Nassau County. We are working with the county executive actually to look at a broader plan to bring more affordable housing to Nassau County and to the town of Hempstead. Rebecca Sinclair is right there. Would you raise your hand, Rebecca? If you just go speak with her right now. I'm sorry, I have to call the next speaker, but please speak with Ms. Sinclair and I'd be happy to discuss this with you further. Diana Thompson. Ms. Thompson. Joyce Stowe. Ms. Stowe. Valerie Lamp.
Valerie Baldwin, welcome aboard, Councilman Muscarella. Nice to have you. Hi. Actually, right off the bat, I'm going to ask you for a meeting. I'm not in your district, but I'm really good at rounding up votes. You can ask Supervisor Gillen. And I'd love to meet with you regarding animal issues in the animal shelter, because although that's not in your district, you will be voting on a lot of things regarding that. Thank you. Wasted time is worse than wasted money. So while we're on quotes, I want to just say this. I'm actually very hopeful. I'm grateful to the board for hiring and passing the hiring of Ashley Behrens, the new assistant director at the animal shelter. And I'm also, again, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed when it comes to this newly appointed councilman. I just want to point out to, what's that guy's name? Tweedy? Mr. Tweedy, Mayor Tweedy. You know, I get tired of the hypocrisy, for lack of a better word, but you have the same side saying appointments are bad, and this guy comes up here as a potential candidate. I'm sure if it were him being appointed to this open seat, he wouldn't have a problem with it, as evidenced by the fact that he didn't have a problem being appointed to other positions in his past. But additionally, you know, here he is trying to say negative things about Councilman Muscarella with regards to his experience, and yet Supervisor Gillen had no prior political experience. And just in general, I think the country has spoken at large that it's refreshing to see people who may not have tons of political experience get up and run. And I have a friend of mine doing it right now in Long Beach. And I think a lot of people are ready to embrace people without political experience and titles. On the flip side, when people talk about families and families in politics, I mean, that dates back to probably the first couple of presidents, right? The Adamses, okay? I mean, and it's on both sides, the Rockefellers, the Roosevelts, the Clintons, the Bushes. Come on. Well, I mean, I'm just so tired of the BS. So let's move past. I want to move forward. I'm so tired when I look back on all the wasted time we've spent fighting for the animal policies to be reinstated just so people can take pictures. We've wasted time trying to get these animals, volunteers, reinstated for being suspended for a he said, she said thing. We have wasted tons of time fighting a ridiculous policy that requires now people to be escorted around to see animals behind bars. And it turns people off and they go to other shelters. We've lost rescues and we're wasting, and you can't cut me off because you just gave her 3 extra minutes in its entirety. So what's fair for one is fair for all. And all I'm trying to say is that I am so tired of fighting to get back to where we were almost 2 years ago when you came in, and now we're worse than ever. The entire reason the animal advocacy community got behind you, Supervisor Gillen, and rounded up votes, and went to your rallies, and went to your fundraisers, and I handled your social media, was because we believed that we were going to progress. And we have done nothing but regress. And it's worse now than ever, and I'm glad that you're on record saying that it's so much better now, because we know it's not, and we have proof. And you know I'm not lying.
Thank you for your comments. James?
Don't I get the same extra time that the woman behind me just
a
had?
homeless woman who was talking about a housing crisis?
So it doesn't matter. So I'm a taxpayer, she's a taxpayer. That's not equal?
I didn't get it.
I'm sorry? No, yeah, Felix didn't.
You can get it now. Okay, so Felix didn't get it, so let's split the difference. I should get
You want to go against that homeless woman who's talking about a housing crisis?
I've seen you give extra time to other people podcasts as well. We can pull up many.
Are you almost done with your comments, Ms. Lamb?
Almost. I'll let you know when. I'll end with
just about.
There's 203 days left until the next election. Let's go, everybody. Vote row B for better.
Thank you. James Jacobs.
Thank you. Good afternoon, James B. Jacob, 568 Ashcourt, Uniondale.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jacobs.
Yeah, maybe Mr. Supervisor and the newly appointed gentleman, congratulations. Maybe you can walk me through something, because I'm not, a learned person, but I like to know things. What areas second district cover? What are the main areas that it covers?
Mr. Mascarello, would you like to answer that?
So you have Southwell Park, Elmont, Garden City, Belrose Terrace, I said Garden City, the Salisbury and parts of East Meadow, parts of West Hempstead, and parts of Franklin Square.
So you don't cover parts of Uniondale?
There is, I think, one ED in Uniondale, but that's mostly Senior Councilwoman Dorothy Goosby's.
No, because the reason I asked the question is, because I know a lot of councilpersons share districts, and I'm surprised that, Uniondale, the question, District 1 is, the bulk of is Senior Councilman Gooseby, but I know the gentleman in the 2nd District, I see I have parts of that also. And they'll ask my question because back in the day when this council and the town passed a certain resolution about certain identities or certain identity north of Hempstead Turnpike, it was understanding with the person in that district that they would be fighting to keep us whole. But I noticed lately that every town will approve a certain area, especially when it comes to the ECG designation, which is Stewart Avenue, Quincy Roosevelt, Charles Lindbergh, and Meadowbrook State Parkway. This thing pops up. But your resolution says it doesn't exist. And being that he's part of the district now, I wonder what his position is going to be in favor of keeping Uniondale whole. That's why I feel we just ask the question. Because I know since Mr. Ron, he's a legal person, and I know sometimes people can't answer the question, but as a taxpayer and constituent, and not a very learned person like all these lawyers up here, nothing against lawyers, But I feel where's the justice for a poor layperson like the one who's before me, who's begging for assistance and asking for certain things done to people of color, be it Hispanic, Asian, whatever. Fairness. That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, I just don't know exactly what.
I'm sorry. I wondered what was his position on the East Garden City situation, being that as part of his district in the little corner there, when you Google it on the map, it's not supposed to exist, and he's trying to district.
So if I can be clear, you're asking Councilman Mascarella what his position is on whether or not a certain area of Uniondale should be called East Garden City?
No, what happened, they trying to fraction north of Road 24, which is Hempstead Turnpike. Anything above that is called that destination. But this town, about a couple of years back, had a resolution stated that entities do not exist. Also, the county said the same thing. But evidently, when it comes to rule law, either you don't apply it equally to all, or you disregard it. Unless it's been resolved or rescinded, then they should let people know in Uniondale that they're not going to honor their resolution, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Do you understand that question, Mr. Mascarella?
Well, this gentleman right there, whose father used to be in it, you'll bring him up to speak. I forgot your name, so I just...
Is the question about East Garden City and Union?
Yes, Mr. Roy. How you doing? Good afternoon.
It's nice to see you.
Oh, you're over there now. Got a promotion.
You think that's a promotion? Now you can't stop it. That's right. The town board, probably 5-6 years ago, took down all of our signs that said East Garden City in the area you're talking about. We cannot control people who make maps, and we can't control private industry and private enterprises that seek to use the term East Garden City. We no longer use it.
Mr. O'Rourke, this point of information, I found out that when I called this entity, that they state it's coming from the town, not the county. So evidently, somebody's not talking to each other. I mean, I'm just a layperson.
I tell you that the town signs are down, but if you give me a location where you see, let me know.
Sir, are you referring?
Good. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you? Are you referring to the fire district signs?
No, what I'm explaining about, if you go right now to your home website, it's the town of Hempstead.
Okay.
Blow it up in the corner right there by it was Hempstead to the north, Quentin Roosevelt to the Pacific West. The east, it would be Charles Lindbergh Boulevard, and Meadowbrook South would be to the southeast.
So you're referring to the GIS mapping?
Yes.
Okay. So I think the designation from the GIS mapping comes from the county and the state. I don't think that the town of Hempstead delineates the actual names on the GIS mapping. I'm sure IT would probably...
We can take a look at that, Mr. Jacobs.
I'm thinking somebody will correct that, because here's the thing, come next year's census, was ever not corrected this year, it'd be a permanent thing. And to me, if I come to someone else's house and split was to me not keeping something not hold together, I think it would be a major disservice to people that support these different individuals. I don't believe in political parties, but I believe in fairness to all. Just saying.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. So we'll call it.
And before I forget, for those, have a good Easter and everything else, and the best of luck, okay? And thank you for
I know that Ron Abraham's over at the county. He's the county legislator for that area, and he's been trying to get that changed on the GIS map also. So people are working on it, trying to get it changed.
So it's a safe bet that the town's in conjunction that they are favoring that Uniondale stays whole then, right?
That's exactly what Giovanna's been fighting for since I've known him.
I'm asking about the town side. I understand that's the county, but this is the town.
The town's already invested.
Mr. Jacobs, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can't go.
I know. I don't want to trouble, but thank you.
Ms. Jacobs, Pearl Jacobs.
Jacobs, President of Melton Garden Civic Association. So just to reiterate the young lady that just left regarding the homeless situation, you notice the fact that shelter homes are disproportionately, placed in Freeport, Uniondale, Roosevelt, Hempstead. It's just a plethora of shelter homes, and they are placed in those areas. They're not serving the homeless people well, and they're not serving the communities well. On a positive note, I would like to just let you know, Supervisor Gillen, that as you're aware that we have the North Garden Civic Association, we're spearheading a positive quality of life transformation in Unionville. And I would like to inform you that collectively together, the community and the town, we have been working together and we have made positive strides. Commissioner Toscano has been consistently responsive regarding our road issues, regarding cleanliness and sweeping. Buildings, John Lipinski, he's just on his A game and he's doing a great job. Sanitation enforcement under our new commissioner, John Conroy. His leadership has been consistently improving and the improvement is progressing. So we appreciate that as well. Regarding what my husband just spoke on regarding the East Garden City issue, I did speak with Legislator Abrahams. We spoke consistently on that. And last week I spoke with Assemblywoman Taylor Raynor, and she's in the process of writing a letter to the Census Bureau. And the last time I was here, I did ask regarding a question as to, I can see my councilwoman is not here again, but...
she actually was not feeling well. She wasn't feeling well yesterday.
Oh, well, I wish her good health. But I did ask a question of her staff last time to please get back to me. We would like the community is asking when will she be holding a community meeting in Unionville? Because I know she has held a couple of meetings in Roosevelt, other communities, but she has yet to hold.
Would someone from the councilwoman's staff, would you speak with Mr. Jacobs?
And I would like an answer, please. I did not receive a response. I'm not going to email you. I'm asking you publicly, and I would like a response. And I know you have my emails. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Stuart Kroll. And I'd like to thank the Commissioner and Mr. Lipinski for working so collaboratively with Millstone Gardens. Thank you.
Kroll, Greatnick. Congratulations, Mr. Mostrella. I'd also like to, I'm going to touch on a couple of topics before I get to ethics and try to keep everybody entertained. I'd like to also express my pleasure with the hiring of Ashley Behrens as Assistant Director at the shelter. I don't see any reason now why Mike Pastore cannot be transferred. Hopefully then we'll have a shelter driven by compassion and hope. I'm also very curious why there's so few animals at the shelter. Do pet owners suddenly become more responsible and taking care of their pets more responsibly? Somehow I doubt it. Also, Massachusetts tends to come pick up cats on a regular basis. And the last time they called, there were no cats. So unless these cats are suddenly practicing birth control, I find it very odd why that's happening. Maybe these cats are not being admitted with the ease, I guess, that they were previously. I find that a little disturbing, or if they're being sent out of state somewhere else, I really don't know at this point. Speaking of which, who's making these decisions as to what cats or what dogs are being admitted and what's happening to them? Is it still Fonte, I guess, making these decisions? I can't imagine now that with Ashley being over there that there's not going to be a tremendous amount of friction, so I personally think it's about time that her month-to-month contract be terminated. There's a dog I want to talk about named Falco. A respected rescuer that I know from out east has been trying to pull this dog. It's a peak mix, and on a good day, this dog might weigh 12 pounds. Apparently, he's nipped half a dozen people. Supposedly, he has some sort of stomach problem that probably is not being addressed, which makes him very, sensitive, to that. And apparently, these nips have done no damage to anybody. The question is now why this dog can't be pulled. Apparently, they now want more insurance. And it's starting to sound like the same situation that happened with Brock, when Brock was murdered. Let's see. And I'm wondering if Pastore or Fonte somehow decided they don't want this dog to go out. Anyway, my last point pertains to the ethics law. Yes, it's wrong that nepotism and cronyism run rampant here in Hempstead. One person gets caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and then the party decides who's going to replace him. It's wrong on every level, but pales in comparison to some other wrongs. The people should be deciding issues, not party bosses of obviously questionable ethics themselves. People should not be moved around from Long Beach or North Hempstead, wherever, just because they need a soft landing spot. Laura, and I disagree with a lot of the ethics things, to attempt to silence somebody is a clear attempt to override the Constitution, which guarantees free speech. That's that's a lot worse than anything else that's been going on. To put somebody under the type of pressure where they're in fear of losing their job is displaying a total lack of ethics and decency. To do this should be and may very well be a criminal offense. Even for a politician to support, I find it incredibly hypocritical to support an ethics law while trying to threaten somebody into giving up their right to free speech is as patently absurd as the New York
Excuse me, are you alleging that I threatened somebody?
No, I'm alleging that you tried to silence her into not speaking.
How did I do that?
Well, by the same memo that everybody else had and that I have sitting on my phone.
A memo that I didn't write. I threatened someone with a memo I didn't write?
Who wrote it?
I don't know. So how are you alleging I threatened somebody, Mr. Kroll? Please explain.
I'm more than happy to explain.
Go right ahead.
According to the memo that I've read, and according to the people that I've spoken to in regard to the situation, you called there, I think on a couple of occasions, but at least once, in order to...
It says that in the memo? That I called there?
It says that you contacted them.
Are you alleging that I called that law firm, Mr. Kroll?
She's trying to trick you. She reached out. That's
No, you're
exactly
making
what
very
it says.
serious. You're alleging that I might have committed a crime. So why don't you tell me specifically what your allegations are? If you're going to accuse me of a crime, you better have some allegations that you ready to back up, Mr. Kroll.
Would you like to see the email?
I would like to hear your allegations. If you're going to accuse me of a crime.
I'll tell you what, I'll read it to you if you like.
Good.
And I'll be more than happy to read it to you. And if you have any dispute with that, you can take it up with the law firm. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to...
So just, your only allegation is that there's a memo. Is that it? Or are you saying I called the law firm?
If you give me a second here,
Let him answer.
I'll gladly pull it up for you here.
She runs the town like a courtroom.
Let's see. Let's see.
Didn't she accuse the entire board of corruption?
Please stop calling out from the gallery. That applies equally to everybody.
The way it ends, by the way, is any violation of the foregoing may result in disciplinary action by the firm, including termination from employment. Please acknowledge receipt. Bonnie Radesha signed that memo. It says here, I'll quote you here, so if you have any problem, contact the law firm. The town supervisor, Laura Gillen, has reached out to the firm regarding certain disparaging remarks that you have directed at and communicated to her in person or through the... So they said you reached out, so do you not deny that? It says that you're in black and white.
I'm asking what your allegation is, sir.
I'm saying...
What is your allegation,
My
sir?
allegation is that this memo clearly states that you have reached out to that firm.
Did I write that memo?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Well, the firm obviously thinks that you did.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll.
You're quite welcome.
Nita Merida?
Nothing.
M. Thunderbird?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Ms. Thunderbird.
I am a resident of Roosevelt for over 50 years. I won't tell my age. But I'm just concerned about something. It's just a small story. Today I can talk about it. Maybe a couple of weeks I couldn't. I run a nonprofit where I actually service approximately 500 kids a year. We just returned from Jamaica on Sunday, where the kids went there for a goodwill tour. We found the building in Roosevelt. There was a shack. All the political signs are up on the building. They always tag the building gang members. And so we took the building over. We've been paying rent, and we renovated the building for $75,000 on the promise that we were getting a grant. And we never received the grant. So subsequently, about 3 weeks ago, we were removed from the building because we could not buy the building. But that comes back to the same point that I'm making. In Roosevelt, we're a square mile, and there are 3 vape stores there now, okay? And they stay open 24 hours. They're in close proximity to our schools and churches. And part of the law that is coming through the governor's office is that people who have been arrested for the sale of marijuana for social injustice, they will be allowed to get low interest or no interest loans to buy this cannabis building. Now, I'm an organization that has been in existence for 35 years working with young people. I lost my facility because I couldn't obtain a mortgage for $250,000. But yet and still, had I been, or if I were a drug dealer, I would be able to get a low interest loan to open up a cannabis house. So that goes back to the same thing. I know that the town is opting out. But what are we going to do? And I only ask this, that on Nassau Road, and I was listening to the young woman about housing. We are only a small community, and we suffer greatly because of the urban issues that many communities here on Long Island do not suffer from. The just quality of life is not there. Our Nassau Road should not house 2 vape facilities that's open 24 hours a day. We need housing, but we have a lot of homes there that are boarded up that could be turned into affordable housing for individuals. But we should not bear the burden of all the people that come into this country looking for a place to live. It should be housing affordable for those, but every community should bear the burden. And when we talk about these vape centers, I'm only upset because I look at it that social representation should not be based on giving out loans to drug dealers. I mean, whatever happened to 40 acres and a mule? I would be happy with 40 acres. But to say that we're going to give them these low-interest loans to come into our community is definitely going to disproportionately affect minority communities.
Can I just ask you a quick question? And this is not political, this is a sincere question. What you're talking about with the low interest loans for those that are arrested for just, selling marijuana, is that something new? Is that in like the last budget, or is that something that's been going on for
as a matter of fact, I've had the opportunity to, and thank you guys for that, because we had the meetings here.
Right.
And they talked about the governor's law. And if you read through, and that was brought up in that meeting as well, so this is nothing that I'm just coming up.
No,
and so in that law, as social reparations for the social injustice that we have suffered as minorities, blacks, no longer the 40 acres and a mule, they will offer low interest or no interest loans to those who have been arrested for marijuana sales, an opportunity to open up cannabis facilities, okay, to sell
dispensaries.
And to me, I just think here, and I always go back to the same thing. I'm law-abiding, and I've been servicing kids for the last 30 years. People know the kind of work that I do. I can't get a loan. So how do we make it easy for others to come in and get these loans, and they're going to set up shop on Nassau Road, okay? And I only say that because we're a small community. To have 3 vape shops, and the reason why we have 3 already is because they know what's coming down the pipe. Even though I know we have opted out, the train has left the station, okay? And the understanding of what's coming down the pipe, everybody's running to these areas where they know they're going to set up shop. And when you talk about 24 hours of them running their business, that's a shame. And I know we can't have this going. I mean, in Roosevelt. So I'm just asking, what are you guys, as a board, now that you've opted out, or going to opt out, what are you going to do for communities such as ours that we are already, inundated?
I don't mean to cut you off, but I know I asked the question. So I think that with regards to marijuana, we all agree in a bipartisan fashion that it's a work in progress. This is honestly the first I'm hearing of this loan issue, and I'm definitely going to look into it. And I know that all of us, the supervisors, the senior councilwomen, all the board members, the reason why we put that moratorium on it is so we can put our heads together and kind of, look towards the future of what we can do as a township. And I think that's what we all are doing.
I thank you, and I hope that you will, look into the communities that are the border communities, and try to ascertain a plan of action that will save us from what's going to come down the pipe. Because to be able to have vape shops open up 24 hours, we need to do something now before it becomes a law that they can, sell, marijuana the way that they want to. We need to put something in place now, and that's
Thank you, Ms. Vandenberg.
We're presently looking into keeping it out of bedroom communities, such as your community, and putting it in commercial districts only, where they can open it, because we can't stop industry from happening, but we can restrict where they're doing it. So we're going to try to get it in commercial areas only, and save bedroom communities like yours, like mine. It's terrible what's going on, and we have to stop it, and that's what the town, we're investigating right now, what legally we can do, because we don't want to jump out and then get look foolish. So we're going to do it properly, and of course the T's, not the I's, but we're looking out for your best and our best too. It helps all of us. Thank you so much for being here.
As the law emerges and we see what the legal landscape is, we will be addressing this. We pretty much are on the same page as a board, I think, on this issue, and we will be getting community input as well. So when this legislation comes to fruition, we will be reaching out to all of our communities to get their input, as we have previously. Thank you.
If I could just add to it and applaud Supervisor Saladino in the town of Oyster Bay with the announcement that he made in Oyster Bay about limiting vape shops and their locations. And I urge us in the town of Hempstead to move quickly with similar legislation. We need to do it quickly, and we really need to follow Mayor Giuliani's approach when he closed all those atrocious porn shops in Times Square. We can't let the details of the law, in a sense, hold us back. We need to fight these vape shops. As far as I'm concerned, every single one of them should be shut down tomorrow, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. We shouldn't be, what if we're challenging court about this? We need to move forward and have the guts that Giuliani showed, and look at Times Square now. We are turning our neighborhoods over to these vape shops. Every single one of them should be out of business. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Mary Ellen Craig. Lucille Davina.
I'd like to talk about the woman who came up here about the feral cat, because that is an issue that I've been talking about for years and years. It started way back when they took away the do not destroys. People always, when they brought animals, they had the right to take back the animal before the shelter euthanized it. And as soon as that was taken away, that was the first nail in their coffin. And it has not affected maybe the dogs as much, because people tend to really care about the dogs, and the dogs get a lot of publicity. But the cats, this is a real problem. And as soon as you were elected, and I think it was within the first month or two that you sat up there, I begged you to look into the cat situation at the Town of Hempstead Animal Shelter, because it's really bad. You have a veterinarian who everyone knows, and it's not just rumor. He dislikes cats. He does not have the same respect for their lives as he does dogs. And then you have Pastori, who is as cold as ice and does not care for any animal and thinks of them as inventory and stock. So that combination is deadly. But the fact that when you first came on, I told you to look at your records, look at your numbers. The euthanasia on cats was through the roof. And that number has not really improved at all.
Commissioner, do we have stats on euthanasia of cats that we could possibly obtain?
Yes, we can obtain, we get the right.
I've already obtained them. Trust me. They, 2018 was still as bad as 17 and 16, and 2019 there was a shift, and I told you about it. The number of cats dying in their cages, dead, died, unknown, went up to 286 unknown, died in cages. And I am telling you, this woman that came up here, God bless her soul, this woman Janice, because not everyone has the smarts to do what she did. She brought a cat into the shelter this morning and realized something is not sitting right with this. She brought a cat in, and they said, oh, we'll assess it, we'll give it 5 days. The cat is feral, and the cat is very, very sick. When she met with Pastori, he told her, we will assess the cat and either put it up for adoption or it'll go to rescue. Impossible. If the cat is sick and the cat is feral, that cat, I can assure you, sits in its cage for 5 days and then gets humanely euthanized or moved to a rescue out of state that nobody knows what its outcome is. And that's why your FOIL numbers are the way they are. And this needs to be rectified. When you have a TNR person willing to take back a sick feral cat, and you deny that person, then you have a real problem. You have to change this. This has to be looked at.
Thank you, Ms. Pino. We will follow up with you.
Thank you.
Teresa Kahutka? Barbara Thomas?
Barbara Thomas, Massapequa. Again, thank you. I'm so happy that the resolution passed for Ashley Barron's as Assistant Director. And I just please ask that you give her the tools that she needs to succeed and enforce a code of conduct upon staff and volunteers, as I've been asking, please, since 2016. And the last thing, I just have a question, and I see that you passed a new code of conduct, a new code of ethics today, code of conduct. And I'm just wondering if the town has finally acknowledged the fact that volunteers at the Town of Hempstead Animal Shelter are your representatives.
Are you asking if they're included in the ethics?
Well, specifically, I know you have for the whole town now the Code of Ethics, Code of Conduct, but I'm wondering if, I saw employees and officials listed there, and of course there is nothing in regards to volunteers, but I'm just wondering, since some of the volunteers who do violate the Code of Conduct of the Town of Hempstead, I'm just wondering if the town is finally recognizing that they represent you because they're making their comments for you.
Would the volunteers be embraced by the Code of Ethics as it's written?
The volunteers have their own code. They're not employees, so they have their own code of ethics that they sign when they become volunteers.
Mm-hmm. I did that at one point. Is it going to be enforced finally?
No. Well, I believe it is enforced. And today's action, I don't believe has anything to do with your question. We're asking, does the town board recognize that they are representatives of the town? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll tell you that they have their own code of conduct that they have to adhere to.
Can that be sorted out at some point? Because they do act, or they present themselves as acting as your representatives when they go to speak in front of other officials, when they say horrible things on the internet, things like that. I see volunteers as your representatives.
There's nothing wrong with a volunteer going out and saying I'm a volunteer at the animal shelter for the town of Hempstead. There's no legal issue there.
Right, I agree. But how about when they're presenting themselves as your representative, giving numbers that might not be true, giving out information that is confidential?
If there were a complaint about a specific volunteer, we would then look at that. No, you don't.
I don't know.
The short answer is the Code of Ethics doesn't impact the volunteers as much as it does the town public officials and town employees.
Right.
The volunteers have their own code of conduct that they adhere to. That's the answer to your
Right, okay. Well, it is violated constantly, and that's my fear with Ashley Barron's coming in, because, as I said before, Ashley Barron's is wonderful. She has a great reputation, a proven success record. But those volunteers who do continue to give out confidential information, to bash and curse at the public as representatives, presenting themselves as representatives of you, that still happens. And I really hope it does not happen anymore, because Ashley's there. And again, Ashley will do great things, but I still see, since the year 2015, that's been a significant problem. And I know you know, because I've come here approximately 10 times telling you. The Code of Conduct needs to be enforced. please, especially now that we're moving forward with Ashley.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
you. Diane Madden?
Diane Madden, I would like to make a comment about what happened with the cat, and basically it is the Pastori, the public versus government philosophy, which he took over in 14, and that's how it's been ever since. They don't embrace the public unless, of course, they need to beg for peanut butter. I apologize, I meant to congratulate you first, Councilman, and you know what, look, if you have a good working conscience, you're in, and we're happy to be working together. Look forward to it. Ashley Brands, congratulations to her. I hope it's a new day. One thing is very clear, we fought very, very hard to get to this point. Other people before you have had this opportunity, and I hope you'll take this opportunity to understand we're looking for transparency. We're looking for just the opposite of what's going on in that shelter right now, the discrimination and the bullying. Mr. Ra, for you to suggest that the volunteers are adhering to a code of conduct, you wouldn't be looking at different lawsuits, and they may increase at this point unless it is put under control. And again, I do thank the union president for getting involved, because she recognized on Facebook alone what was going on and that the code of conduct was in violation. And by the way, I'll remind you for the umpteenth time, it's all mismanagement, it's all Mr. Pastori. I'd like to also congratulate Debbie Puglisi. I don't think there could be a better person, a kinder person, a more emotionally connected person to work with our seniors. I just hope she continues to foster cats when she moves to this new position. She was one of the first ones in that department to step up, and I hope she continues doing that good work. The investigation, Mr. Rhino, we spoke off record. You have mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the investigation of Ms. Fonte continues. What I'm concerned about is no one has asked for the additional information at this point. What also troubles me is that Ms. Fonte is still there, out of contract. I went to the shelter a number of times to take a look at the play groups, that 10,000 precious grant dollars we used to teach the staff and volunteers. What I'm seeing, first of all, I'm not seeing hardly any play groups of these dogs. What was promised that every single dog would be in a play group for 30 minutes a day. I've only seen the same dogs. No dogs have been put into the play group additionally. I understand, and from a factual standpoint, Ms. Fonte has caused bloodbaths when she puts dogs into play groups. I want to know, when are they hiring a new trainer? Could you stop the clock, please?
Commissioner?
We can talk now. Our lawsuit's kind of on hold till I decide what to do. So let's sit down at some point.
How can I help?
I think there was a question. Is there a question, Ms. Mann?
Yes, please. I know that Supervisor Gillen had, I believe, put up an RFP for a trainer in several months ago. Have not seen it again. I would like to know what is being done to find another trainer, a qualified trainer, somebody with a proven record, because to put in Ms. Ferenz in there in the situation, I mean, I'm already hearing this poor woman is looking to figure out how to handle it, you know, what to do with certain behaviors. That is not her job. That is not what we want her to do. So when are they hiring a new behaviorist or a trainer?
The instruction of the town board and the supervisor will continue with the RFP.
You can put that out to RFP again.
I appreciate that very much. Real quickly, too, if you don't mind, the investigation, when the union president came up here and Councilman Diaz-Esposito was smart enough to ask for an investigation on those violent comments that were made on Facebook. You had mentioned, Mr. Rod, that there would be an investigation. What's really concerning is that normally, and I don't necessarily agree with this policy, because there have been many good volunteers that have been taken out for months on end and proven to be wrongly accused and put back in the shelter. I'm wondering why these two volunteers who made the most violent comments that could not even be repeated are still in the animal shelter while there's an investigation going on.
Thank you for your comments. Don't comment on investigations.
No, I'm not asking for a comment on an investigation. I'm wondering why they're being treated differently than all of the other volunteers. Ms. Gilman, maybe you can mention, add to that. Because historically, wonderful volunteers, pioneer volunteers, that just simply go in there and walk dogs, have been targeted by Ms. Fonte, removed from the animal shelter, brought back some of them months later. These two volunteers, there's proof that they wrote things on Facebook that were vile and in relation to the animal shelter as town representatives, and yet their volunteerism goes uninterrupted. Why is that?
Mr. Rowe, was there an investigation? Was there an investigation? To the extent you can comment?
Any of the complaints that we have, we look into.
So you're looking into it, and the volunteers have been uninterrupted. I just want that on record. That's very important to me, because you know I'm a believer in treating people fairly.
Is I don't comment on pending investigation.
Okay. And as far as the field trips also, lastly, there's field trips going on. You want to talk about a union issue? The union people in the animal shelter have been told they can only give a limited amount of information to the public. The public that are looking to adopt, the public that contribute, the public that volunteers, the public to provide foster care, the public who funds $5 million. They're not allowed to give information, certain information. Yet, when some of the favorite volunteers take animals out off the property, and by the way, I foiled this to find out on a ridiculously small amount of policies and procedures, they're allowed to tell the public whatever they want. That's a union issue. I would really get on top of that, Laura Dillon. If you ever intend to make friends with the union president, try protecting some of those employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madden. I try to protect our employees all the time. Rich Shuren?
4.5 minutes or 3 minutes?
Good afternoon, Richard Shuren, 167 Jefferson Avenue, Marlboro Isle. There's a wonderful program called Green Spot, which the majority, my understanding of, is a project that the town's been working on, some people in the town, and the majority refuses to put it on the calendar or take it off the calendar for consideration. Why is that, Councilman King-Sweeney? It's Green Spot related to electric cars?
It was tabled today indefinitely.
No, let's not create drama here, okay? So it's not that we refuse to address it. I initially thought it was just about scooters, which I think is a great idea. I use them myself. I have the app on my phone. So I have no problem with it.
You have a video of that?
What's that?
Video of you on the scooter?
I do. I actually do.
Oh my God.
It's a lot
You
of
got
fun.
plenty of time to waste here.
But I didn't realize it was about electric cars, and because these potentially the locations could be used at train stations, one of the biggest complaints that I have from the South Shore residents is not enough parking spots at train stations. So before we go forward with the project, we want to make sure that there's enough spots. That's it. I mean, we're all about green energy, how to save the environment. We're trying to create drama here.
I just want to be clear, Councilwoman, that the scooter initiative is totally different. I think we discussed it, and I told you we put it out to RFP again to try to get competitive bids from the various vendors who do scooters. That's completely different than Green Spot. And Mr. Haber, have we talked about the Green Spot with the town board in the past? Can you talk a little bit about the process that we went through with Green Spot? Because Mr. Shuren, I agree with you. You're right. This would be a great environmental initiative. I thought everybody was on board. I was surprised to find it tabled today.
It's pretty obvious that the majority doesn't want you to get the political credit, and that's the only reason why it's not going forward, just like the building department, just like countless other things.
It actually has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that.
Mr. Haber, what was the process that was followed with Green Spot?
We put out an RFP for green solutions for mobility, and the purpose of it is to try and get ride sharing to get the community to stop using carbon-polluting cars and take some spots. We don't want to take spots away at train stations. We want to basically have ride sharing to take cars off the road. Essentially, the zip car using other electric cars. And we went out for an RFP. We had one respondent. This company, Green Spot, would come out of pocket for everything. It wouldn't cost the town any money whatsoever. After the company Green Spot is reimbursed, the town would have a percentage sharing in the profits going forward.
So no cost to taxpayers whatsoever, and the town might actually realize some revenue from this great green initiative that would reduce our carbon footprint and make rides to train stations easier for residents. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, but beyond that, we've had months of talks about this. We met with the town board representative, and they thought it was a wonderful idea.
What town board representative did you meet with?
Christian Shuley came and he was all for it. They originally offered 21 spots on the train station, some on streets the town owned. No one wants to take any spots away from the train station. And it would be chosen by the board. They put forth 21 spots. The board would have a pilot program where 5 spots would be chosen. Everybody seemed to be on board, no pun intended. And I just don't understand why it was tabled. We went through ad nauseum discussions about it. Green Spot was here to actually speak if there were any questions about it, and it was just taken off.
Mr. Chinchulli, Mr. Haber is characterizing your conversation. Was that accurate? Because I feel like I'm sensing a gotcha moment here where there really shouldn't be. There's been a lot of cooperation on the board, and I don't know why we're setting this up in public session now. I mean,
I'm just speaking, I was asked about the process, and I'm just talking about a conversation that was had.
And was that inaccurate?
When this resolution was tabled, there's no gotcha set up. This is a question that came from a resident, and that's why Mr. Haber was called up.
We had one meeting where the company came in and presented to us, and we were just looking at the locations, the possible locations. We asked for 5. They gave us over 10, and we need the commissioner of engineering and people to look at it to make sure it has no effect on the parking lots and the commuters.
And doesn't the resolution say that there are 5 and that they would be determined?
The resolution was the purpose to just basically choose them as the green service provider, and you weren't even entering a contract, and a contract would be chosen, and from a list of spots that they thought were viable, then the board would choose from 21 spots and narrow down to 5.
It wasn't clear on how the spots were going to be chosen.
I sent you a list of all the spots
No,
and where they were
there's
located.
possible locations of 15, 20 spots, even 30 spots. But the question is, what spots are we going to allow? Who's going to determine that type of...
That would have happened after you sign and approve from the board. There's no contract. You're entering an agreement to then sign a contract and then choose and move forward and have a
We have to
negotiation.
determine how those spots are going to be picked.
Excuse me, you're being very rude. He's the chief of staff to the
Everyone's
town board,
rude
and I
here.
asked for him to speak.
I want to know who you...
Mr. Chinchulli is the chief of staff for the town board, to clarify. And if you read the resolution makes clear that nobody was selecting spots right now, that it would be determined and approved by the town board. Everyone's sitting up here.
What I just heard was Erin King Sweeney say she thought it was a scooter initiative, yet the chief of staff is obviously very familiar with this issue. I mean, you still maintain that you thought it was a scooter issue?
Supervisor and I had offline conversations regarding a scooter initiative. I don't know what kind of gotcha moment you're trying to create here. You're totally off base. Mr. Haber, you said that Mr. Chinchulli fully supported this. He's telling you he didn't, so can you correct that?
No, actually, we were in meetings. This is a great initiative, and I still got you a moment. I thought it was going to be passed this morning. I'm not like I set anything up. I'm very frustrated after 6 months of work and feel like we're working together that this is pulled off the board docket and tabled indefinitely. I mean, this is no cost to the town whatsoever. And you had said yourself in the meeting, this is a great
No one's
idea.
saying the program is bad. It's not a gotcha moment. We're just saying we were cautious about the locations, and we had a scooter company come in and present this to us.
Wait a minute, this is not a scooter company. This is a completely different initiative. You were given this, the whole point of this is not to, you're selecting a vendor, and then you were going to enter in a contract with the vendor, and then you were going to choose the spots. So delaying this is just delaying the whole process.
Okay, so the town board would like to review the locations in more detail to make sure it doesn't have any effect on the commuters, that's all.
So what it seems like is that there was some sort of communication issue. It has zero to do, I know Mr. Sherman likes to make everything political. This has nothing to do with political. This is not trying to take any success away from the supervisor. It was that we didn't have the correct information, and moving forward we will. And I hope that Mr. Haber can present us with the correct info, and moving forward we can get it onto the calendar.
The correct info was presented in a resolution, which I suggest that going forward, maybe you read them.
I do.
There's just no need to be nasty here. We are trying to work cooperatively with you and protect the environment, be forward thinking. Why are we doing this?
Favor of misleading people. It was in a resolution.
Surprise what Christian Julie said. We're trying to work together with you.
Sure, do you have any other comments?
I didn't mischaracterize anybody. I'm merely telling you how the process came about, and it was a conversation we had. I'm not calling names. I'm not saying anything negative. It's just an amazing initiative that we worked on, and I'm just shocked it was pulled, and it's frustrating. That's all.
But it seems like everybody on the town board thinks it's great, and they just want to figure out how we're going to choose spots. So
I'm
hopefully
happy to
it'll
bring
come
them in and
back on
have them
again.
make a presentation to the board if they'd like, or do it privately so you completely can get exactly what it is. And if you choose to then not to go forward, that's fine too. But I'm really excited about it if we can get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Haber. Mr. Sherman, do you have any other remarks?
on this point, my concern is the dysfunction that you have a representative from the company here. They think they're getting it's going to be awarded, and then you pull it off the calendar. It may not be a political thing, but it's certainly an expression of the dysfunction of the town board. And I want to ask you, Councilman Diaz-Pazito, as you know, the Avalon Bay project, the site plan is up to be is going to go before the board. It's going to be on the calendar. Will you commit to that being on the calendar at a night meeting so representatives in your district can come and speak on that?
The site plan for Avalon Bay?
Yes. When it comes on the calendar, will you commit to me and other residents of Clark While that it will be on the calendar for a night meeting?
Sure, I have no problem with that.
And can you tell me, and will you commit to giving residents of Clark While sufficient notice of when it's put on the calendar so that
when I know, you'll know.
Okay, well, when do you expect it to be put on the calendar?
I have no idea.
You're in control of it, are you not?
Am I in control of the calendar? Well, actually, something like that would come from the town attorney's office. So, I know, the last time I checked, I do not run the town attorney's office. That's Mr. Raj's job. But as soon as he lets me know when it's ready to go on for a site plan, we'll have communication.
So, have you spoken to Mr. Raj about when it should be on the calendar?
No, I haven't.
You haven't at all? Have you spoken to anybody about putting it on the calendar?
That site plan has not yet reached my office. So,
Have you spoken to anybody about putting that on the calendar and when it should be put on the calendar?
I just said no. What is that you're trying to get at, Rich? Let's just call a spade a spade. Stop trying to beat around the bush and say it directly.
What I'm getting at is that you intentionally did not want that resolution, that particular resolution, to be on a night.
It hasn't even reached Mr. Raj's office yet. Rich, you are so incorrect. It's ridiculous. You come here and make up these things out of, I don't even know where you get them from. There has been zero discussion. The site plan hasn't even reached the town attorney's office, but you're looking into your crystal ball and deciding that I've already decided that I don't want it on a night meeting. Where do you come up with this stuff, honestly? Like, where do you dream this up? Listen, let's be very clear so everyone knows that's here and everyone at home knows. Listen, let me finish. We all understand that you hate my guts. We got it. Everyone's got it. Okay? But dreaming up this stuff that I've somehow manufactured a site plan to not be put on a day meeting that hasn't even reached the town attorney's office yet. I mean, honestly, what is it that we're talking about? And stop beating around the bush, just say it directly.
You're committed to put it on the night calendar, correct?
As soon as I hear from Mr. Ra that it's ready to go, I'm happy to put it on the night calendar.
You're committed to telling the residents of Clark While in advance.
This is now the third time I'm saying this. To everybody that's home in Harbor Isle and Island Park, the site plan approval for Avalon Bay will be on a night meeting, and I will be happy to let everyone know. Good?
Good, that's what I wanted.
Excellent, so success.
For once.
For once, right? There you go. You just couldn't end it there, right, Rich? You couldn't end it. You had to keep going.
Just like you.
You do a lot of unethical things.
Okay, Rich. Here we go. All right. We knew that was coming.
I want to transition.
So ridiculous.
Second time he did something nice and got slapped in the face for it.
Mr. Sharon, please stop calling out from the gallery. Mr. Sharon, do you have any other comments that you'd like to make?
I want to talk about the LIPA protest and the LIPA concern in my community. The town of Huntington supervisor has issued a letter supporting the community in its battle against LIPA and the tax cert issues. We held a public meeting. Supervisor, you sent a representative to that meeting. Anthony Diaz-Pazito didn't even bother to show up, even though it was in his hometown.
Okay, well, I've been in touch with Mr. Dorigo multiple times, and I plan on having a meeting with him, but thank you.
Who? With who?
Paul Dorigo, who's heading up that, yeah, okay, I know.
Sharon, do you have a...
I'm asking again for this board's support. In the same manner that the town of Huntington is supporting its residents, I'm asking this board, and you, Anthony Diaz-Pazito, and you, Supervisor Gillen, to support the residents of Island Park in their battle against LIPA for their...
And Rich, I've said it a million times, I do support the people of Island Park. I've lived there for 37 years.
You have shown no tangible support.
Well, that's your...
The one time you tried to show support...
Mr. Sharon, we have to...
Right, here we go. Go ahead. You can attack later on Facebook. That's where you do it best.
Rachel Martino.
This is fun.
Richard Martino, Queens Park. I have to read off my phone, sorry. Good Supervisor and board members. First off, I want to congratulate and welcome the new assistant director at the Town of Hempstead Animal Shelter. I've heard good things about her and I look forward to helping homeless animals together. Side note, the bloodbath statement is a blatant lie and it's a disturbing expression to just gain negative attention, and it was terrible it was said here without anyone to correct the false accusation. However, today I will focus on the Town of Hempstead Animal Shelter's volunteers. I'm here alone today since it was such a beautiful day. We collectively decided it was very important to have the dogs out instead of coming here. In regards to previous comments, the volunteers have recently been required to participate in some meetings in regards to the new handbook with the rules and the ethics code of conduct. We are all on board and agree and are compliant. Ironically, it's the same 4 or 5 people saying the same lies every meeting that have something different to say. Some of which have been outed in foils that have somehow had the power to actually kill far too many animals unjustly in the past under prior administration. So let's not forget about that part. Which brings me to my whole point today. There are so many absurd and preposterous accusations about the volunteers coming from different entities outside. Some of them old and some of them new. I would like to rebuttal many of the accusations, but unfortunately there's just not enough time, and it usually falls upon deaf ears. What I will say is that if anyone out there with any type of power or leverage that's willing to put forth any negative energy into lying, bashing, and degrading the selfless volunteers, essentially trying to push us out and away from the animals, they need to know what they are doing is disgraceful, hurtful, completely unnecessary, and downright inhumane. Like really, why would they do that? The homeless animals at the shelter aren't equipment or vehicles or streets or buildings. They are living, breathing creatures, and there is so much scientific, factual knowledge out there to prove that the dogs of the shelter actually have emotionally driven behavior similar to that of humans. They are not living a happy life at the shelter, no matter how much quality there may be. The bottom line, these are companion pets living in an unnatural atmosphere that emotionally can break them down. We volunteer there to make their lives happier in a very unhappy place. Why would anyone want to take that away from the animals? I'll tell you why, for their own personal gain, whatever that may be. Maybe they're trying to get votes or attention or trying to make more money, or it could possibly just be an abuse of a power position. And you know what? That's bad karma. Some may laugh at that statement, but nothing good can come from trying to destroy something that's good and helpful and wonderful in a very dark place. If anyone wants to really know the truth, come down and volunteer with us. Walk next to us. Chat in the hallway with us. Invite us to have a conversation on how we can all work together and make things better. Don't start bashing us when you don't even know who we are. I mean, really, because we like to love animals. And listen, I know not everybody gets it, our love for the animals, but it should be respected. The volunteers hurt no one and get nothing for it other than the joy we get knowing that we make a difference in these animals' lives. Can I just do a little bit? So listen, it's an open door policy. Come join us. I don't know. While there are homeless animals at the shelter, you can best believe that we will be there trying to help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice afternoon.